Is this thing on?
Are you ready, Matt?
You're listening to Box Office Bingers
with Matt Diaz and Ernesto Santos.
Good evening, folks. We have a wonderful evening's entertainment lined up for you.
We know each other. He's a friend from work.
Box Office Bingers.
And the only way that I know how to do it is to find you a bloody good devil.
He's my friend. I don't have friends. I got family. I can do this all day.
You know, if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything.
Matt, it's 2025, and we are here for another year of Box Office Bingers. And let me tell you, we have a stacked show today. Tell the lovely people.
It does feel like it doesn't, but then it does.
It most
like it
definitely
doesn't feel
is.
stacked. Ernesto's like, you know how long we've been prepping for this show?
Several hours.
Yeah.
Put my glasses back on.
One could say this episode is actually a year in the making. You see what I did there?
I see what you did there. You're so clever.
Thank you so much. 2025. I'm excited to be here for another year of Box Office Bingers. I hope everyone had a safe and happy holiday season. Ernesto, it does feel like it's been a minute since December felt like a blur, and I don't think we didn't record much in December.
No, we didn't.
We were spending some time with family, vacation time, and trying to squeeze in when we can. And I just feel like that we were like passing ships. For like we record, then we were off for 2 weeks, and then we record again. And yeah, so I'm happy that we're kind of getting back on track, especially with the Oscar season, the award season coming up.
We're coming in real strong this year.
Yes,
we've already got like so many things planned. I'm very excited for this year. I feel like this year is going to be our best year.
Yeah, I mean, we're really doing, we're putting in the work more than we have ever had before to make sure that we have all the information and staying on top of the award season. And we typically do every year, but like you've always mentioned, we get better and better every year. And what's the word I'm trying to say? It's so much so that we are reviewing not one, but two Oscar contenders this episode. The first of which is Conclave, which is directed by Edward Berger, who is an Oscar-nominated director of All Quiet on the Western Front. That movie was amazing.
Fantastic. Which we also reviewed. It was a great movie.
We also reviewed that too. That film was also, I think it won, if I'm not mistaken. It did win, yeah.
Yeah, it won foreign film.
Yeah, and so so now he's coming off the heels of All Quiet on the Western Front. He's given us Conclave, and that's going to be starring Ralph Fiennes, Stanley Tucci, John Lithgow, and Carlos Diaz. And the film was also written by Peter Strahan. Yeah, Strahan, who's also an Oscar-nominated screenwriter of Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy, The Debt, and Our Brand in Crisis. The film is based on the 2016 novel of the same name by Robert Harris. So they're going to be diving into that movie. It's highly looked at as an Oscar contender. It also just recently won the Golden Globe for Best Screenwriting, and we're going to be we just planned this a few minutes ago. Now we're going to be in a future episode going to be diving into all of basically our Oscar talk.
Yep.
We're going to go over the winners of the Golden Globes, go over the winners of the Critics' Choice. We're going to go over the nominations for the Screen Actors Guild, the Directors Guild, and the big one, the nominations of the Oscars. We're going to compile all that into one episode and then have a really good lay of the land of what we need to do, how we're going to prep for it, and all the good stuff in between, all that. So looking forward to that. Another movie we are reviewing this week that is also in the Oscar contender list is The Substance, a movie that I had kind of teased a couple episodes ago, saying that I had watched it, and I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars, and I refused to tell Ernesto anything about this movie.
I have thoughts. I have many thoughts. I have many thoughts on this movie.
And I can't wait to hear that because I'm so excited to talk about this movie in full detail. That movie is starring Demi Moore, who just won the Golden Globe for her performance in that movie, as well as Margaret Qualley and Dennis Quaid also stars in that movie. Written and directed by Qualley Farguet, who is a French director, and this is like her first. I think we were talking about this earlier. This is like a mix between like the movie was produced and was both. It was filmed in France, but also partially produced in the U.S. So it's not technically a foreign film, but it has a lot of elements of the whole movie spoken in English. So there's that as well.
I mean, and it has. I mean, the whole movie itself just is like a stylized, fictionalized version of Hollywood. So it's you know it's about America. About American entertainment industry. There's a lot of interesting things to talk about when we eventually talk about that movie. Absolutely.
And then after our 2 reviews, we are diving into the best of 2024. Like I just mentioned, a segment that we do once a year in the making, and we go over all the best television shows, all the best movies, and we compile them all and which one is in our top 10 lists of movies and TV shows. So as Ernesto says, it's a jam-packed episode. It's a little bit unconventional. We typically do news and what you're watching. We're putting that aside, giving you a double feature and the best of.
It's a new year. It's a new us. We got all kinds of new shit planned this year. I'm very excited.
Absolutely. All right. So let's dive right into our first spoiler review, which is Conclave. Ernesto, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts on the movie?
Well, I will say, like, initially the first hour of this movie kind of dragged for a little bit, but I feel like it really picked up once we started getting into, like, the whole, like, political intrigue between the different cardinals that were seeking this position. You know, there was the Pope who died, and Ralph Fiennes is as he called himself in the film, the manager. You know, he's managing the conclave of bringing all the cardinals together to bring a vote in. And there's also Stanley Tucci. He's involved. John Lithgow is involved. And there's a couple others who are involved. And it didn't really get interesting until they started going at each other. Like, you know, once the Cardinal Adeyemi, I think his name was, when that whole thing came to light with the sister, and then he has its illegitimate child, and John Lithgow's character, when he was found out that just hours before he was dismissed from being a pope, and there's just all this like backstabbing, and it kind of reminds me of like House of Cards, of like that political intrigue, that back and forth. But for me, that first hour, that like building up to this point, was a little bit slow for me, so it took a while for me. Like once things started happening, it's like, oh, let me adjust my seat. Let me adjust my seat a little bit. I think one thing that stuck out to me was, as typical with his films, is the sound design, the score, the cinematography, and the production design. These is where Edward Berger's films really, really shine. Regardless of how you feel about the narrative itself, like, he finds a way to really play. I would even go as far and say it's editing as well, just because I feel like the way the movie edited, these long takes in between cuts, where he brings you in, where he pulls you into the character, I think is just really, really well done. Some of the writing on this is really good. Ralph Fiennes is talking. He says, "Certainty is the deadly enemy of tolerance," and like that line when he's talking about that the Pope should have an air of doubt, so that, because then that leads you to question and further investigate things. And I just thought that was really interesting to put in there, because yes, this movie is about the conclave and the new Pope, but it also brings to light like just the political process, different political processes in different countries. I was watching this interview where he was talking about, you know, this obviously for us, it's relevant to us because it came out during election year, but this movie was shot. He was shooting this movie while he was doing the awards press tour for All Quiet on the Western Front. So it wasn't. Oh, wow. So almost like those themes were prevalent in his mind, but almost like not as prevalent as if he made it specifically to be for like make this story on election year. So I just thought that was those obvious parallels were very interesting. But I think there's in that, just going back to that line, that there's a lot of truth to that. Like that is what you want. You want doubt because you want somebody to take the information that they've been trained on their entire life, and when they're faced with these life situations, whatever it may be, and some of which we explore in the film, that you're able to have that air of doubt, to at least question it, to review, to give yourself that air of review, as opposed to having that wall of certainty that blocks you off from taking in new ideas, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I think it does. And honestly, one of the things I enjoyed about this movie was it made me think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it makes you think. Just I think one of the best things about this movie is the dialogue and the exchange that it has within its characters, and like you see, like you said, the doubt that is going through Ralph Fiennes' character, and as the manager, and he's dealt with all these pressures on who is the best person to be the Pope, and then you see people compromising.
Yes.
Of like, well, this is how we decide, and it can be a multitude of days to do that, and people are obviously rioting outside, but they can't see what's going on out there. And so I liked the dynamics that was involved within this process. This is a process that I knew nothing about.
Same.
And I was, to me, you said the first hour is a little bit boring in a sense, and I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I was also intrigued from the idea of like, I don't know what this process is like, and I would like to think they're doing obviously a dramatized version of it, but I feel like the values aside, the drama aside, what actually goes down within those walls is somewhat comparable of, decision making. And it feels like in some cases, which I find hilarious, some people refer to this as like Mean Girls, but in the church. And they're just trying to figure out who's the next prom queen. You know what I mean? And so like,
but essentially you're correct. I mean, you're essentially 100% correct, because this is what I mean is like this process of electing a new figurehead translates to so many, whether it's political or even electing a prom queen, like the same kind of elements in the procedure are almost identical. Whereas, I mean, we're not burning paper to see what color the smoke is, but there is some sort of an election process, and there has to be some sort of majority to decide who will take that position. It is usually a mix of people who are really egotistical, some people who maybe have good means and they are a good person. Like a perfect example is Eddie Ame, where he's viewed, like Ralph Fiennes tells him, he goes, "You are a good man. Like, you're a good person, but you're going to be, if I give you this position, unfortunately, you're unfit because of this situation. Like regardless of how good you are, you will continually be overshadowed by this thing, whether it was 5 years ago, in your case, 30 years ago." And, he sits with him and he's crying with him, and I think he sympathizes with him, but because he also understands that mistake has come back to haunt him. As much as he thought it wouldn't come back to light, is that the truth always has a weird way of rearing itself back around.
And then you see that continue with John Lithgow's character, and like because it was implied, that's actually what happened. He actually sent in that woman, to the, I guess, before they shut everything down. He planted her for that for it to play out exactly the way it played out in the film. Right, which is like pretty devious in a way. And then also another good reason why, even though that there's one point where he was the best person, like, and then everyone's kind of compromising with themselves. Like, well, we don't want this person to be the Pope, so we have to now elect this person because the alternative is like someone that's worse compared to someone that we can live with, and like they're gonna change their values. And then if that's what you're willing to do to become Pope, then do you deserve it? And I think that's an interesting thing that they brought up as well.
But what's really interesting about that is because they also kept coming back to this same line of Well, he didn't work out, but this next person is the least worst option. They kept coming back to this one, like almost that same, not necessarily that same sentence, more or less, but that same theme of like, and I feel like through voting and, you know, regardless of not even just this past election or even many previous elections, that I have personally heard people say that, like, well, I'm just voting for the least worst option. I'm voting between a shit sandwich and a turd burger. Like, I'm just trying to decide which one, it's not even which one do I like more, it's which one do I hate less.
Right. And that's obviously what, like, a lot of people just kind of came down to in this movie.
Yeah.
And then you have Stanley Tucci, who felt like it was the perfect fit to a degree. And then we kept learning more and more, and you could tell that he's like, oh, I don't want it, but he really, really wanted it, and therefore he didn't deserve it.
Yes. And so I thought that was super interesting, because I just thought it right off the bat, you know, they're sitting in that auditorium setting, and he's like, well, I don't want it. It's like, I don't need it. He goes, but I need to be the alternative to Tedesco, which was like the old, because Bellini, Stanley Tucci character's name, he was more of on the liberal side, and whereas Tedesco was more of the conservative pope, where, you know, he's trying to introduce like the old ideas, and Bellini wants more of this new age of all these blending of ideas. And it's like he initially came off as the response to him, but then later on when Lawrence starts getting votes, and I don't remember if this is when he voted for himself. I think he voted for himself. Is that when the bomb went? I think it may have been when the bomb went off. I actually don't remember exactly when that point is. But I thought it was interesting that he got on to him about people voting for him instead of them voting for Lawrence as opposed to voting for him. It's like, you said you didn't even want this, because then it's not even for him. It wasn't about him winning. It was more of the other guy losing. He didn't even care. And the only reason, and I bring up the point about Lawrence only because I thought it was really interesting that he that one time that he voted for himself, it's almost like he pushed it off, but then like that's a hint to how people respond to power. If people are continually telling you that you need to do this thing, eventually that idea starts to seep itself in. So it's almost like that power calling out to him, and then like even just for that second, like that one time, he entertained the idea where he thought he would be the best option. So I think it's interesting how the idea of power seeps its way into these different individuals and how they respond into wanting it or not wanting it.
Or even, again, going to continue to talk about Stanley Tucci's character, Bellini, he was so concerned, like, Lawrence, you have 5 votes. Like, what's up with that?
Yes.
And it's like, it's not like you were leading.
Exactly.
You were, at the time, you wasn't even leading. So, but he was so fixated on the 5 people that voted for Ralph Fiennes' character, even though he was never in the running of the majority, but yet he was fixated on like, whoa, I thought we were on the same team here.
Yes.
But yet he didn't control that.
No.
So I think, I mean, even those were like early tells that these 4 individuals that they were, I guess leading at the time should not have been the choice. But then you see that the film was then, what I do like about this movie is that the drama that was going in between it, like you were kind of going in sort of a wave of like almost like a snake.
Yes.
And you're kind of weaving through the story of like, oh, I'm leaning this way. Oh, nope, leaning that way. Oh, learn information, going back this way. And they go like that. And so that was like the fun part about it. And then like we got to see the results of that like chapter within the next voting process.
Absolutely. I mean, there really is a lot to appreciate about it. I think for me, the first hour, like, yeah, it's a lot of the connections and the story building, but like for me, like once like the back and forth started happening, it's like the movie just like kicked up a whole other notch, and I was like, let's go. Especially like when like the bomb went off, we're at this we're at this peak in the movie. I will say the only thing that was a tell is the character who comes in, who's the late ad from the Pope. He like was secretly, or they were secretly made into a cardinal a year before, and there's like as soon as that person came in, I go, that person's gonna get elected. Like I called it as soon as that character came. I will say that like I looked at it and I was like, That's gonna be the winner, especially after the bomb happened and they gave that speech. I was like, you almost like just solidified it right there in this moment.
Honestly, I didn't know anything until about the speech, because that was the first time that they spoke up.
Yeah,
like they were kind of in the shadows and kind of and that person, that character, Benendez,
Benitez,
yeah, they were always voting for Lawrence.
Yes.
because they felt like that they were going to, like, Lawrence was the best candidate no matter what. And Benitez was like, this is who I'm voting for. I will say it out loud. It's like, I don't believe anyone else should be the Pope except for you. And then that got onto Lawrence's skin of like, well, I can't be it. And then he thought about it. It's like, maybe I can be it because there's so much corruption over here, and then within all the cardinals anyway. And you would think at one point that he would have become the Pope.
Yes.
For the person who truly didn't want it.
The only reason I say that is because like right off from the first vote, that person got one vote. And then every continual vote, that person would continually creepingly get like just a few more votes here and there, a few more votes here and there. So while we didn't spend a lot of time with this character, I think it pointed to that, like, maybe they weren't doing things intentionally or maliciously, but they were gaining, what's the word I want to use? Maybe interest,
I guess,
intrigue. Like they were gaining favor. I guess I'll use the word favor.
Yeah.
Popular is another good way to put it. They were gaining like favor within the group itself after the initial introduction.
Which is crazy to see that, like, within a couple of days, and like as the quote unquote drama was unfolding, you see that how much of a shift there was in almost in every voting.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was a moment where they realized that there was kind of like a standstill because people kept voting for the same people, and literally between each voting, all you're doing is swaying people to vote one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much what the game was. And then eventually, when like your dirty laundry aired out, I was like, well, this person's out of the running, so we got to vote for somebody else. But it needs, like, I forgot what the majority vote was. It was like 80.
That was 2/3.
2/3. Okay,
you might have been right though. I think I'm not 100% sure, but I did read online that it has to be a majority vote, because we were looking at.
Right.
I was because when John Lithgow they accused him of something, and I can't remember what it was. Damn it, I don't remember what it was. It started with a C. Like he's.
Like in the movie, you mean?
Yeah, in the movie. They accused him. They go, he's in violation of Connolly. I can't remember what it was. Excuse me.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about to a certain degree. Are you looking it up?
Yeah, you can keep going. You can come back to me.
Okay. Yeah, I'm busy right now. But yeah, I think like I mentioned before, the back and forth of the drama is what really got to me. And this isn't typically a movie that I would be drawn to just based off the trailer. Like, honestly, if I'm being honest, if I saw the trailer, I probably would not have watched it. But because it was getting a lot of buzz in the award season, that's why I gave it a chance. And I'm glad that I did, because it was actually really compelling and really intriguing and engaging to its audience, to keep them wanting to know, like, there was an end goal, like who will become the Pope. And then here's all this drama that was going on within it, and that's what made it interesting.
I mean, I'm kind of in the same boat with you. Like I kind of wrote it, as we talked about it many times. Like I kind of wrote it off to begin with. But I think it's great. But what else are your, like, kind of other initial thoughts about the film?
Yeah, I think that obviously we're talking about the ending. Like there's a twist.
Yeah.
That Benitez Benitez was born, or is born, a female.
In that.
And then I guess they didn't realize it until later in life. And I forgot what disease. I wouldn't say disease, but like there was a condition that they had that they didn't realize until they were much older. And the Pope knew, and that's why they rushed for them to be a cardinal.
Yeah, because they had the condition, and that's when they realized that internally that this person had ovaries and a uterus.
Yes.
But then
Yes.
but then they were perceived a male their entire life. So
Right.
then it became
And
that conversation of who you are inside as to who you are on the exterior, and like how does who you are inside relate to who you are as a person, and just that. I mean, this whole extremely complicated debate.
Yes. And I honestly, when like the word was going out, like it was an underlying like situation that I was like we were trying to figure out why Benitez was here in the first place, and kind of like that information was slowly creeping in up until the very end, where Benitez was able to say his piece, win the people, become Pope, and then all of a sudden the news dropped to Lawrence, and immediately he rushed over to Benitez and was like, "Tell me this isn't true." And you would think the worst, because everything else was pretty bad. Mm-hmm. So they did a really good job of like kind of teeing it up as like everyone has their dirty laundry, and they all have a past, and they all weren't fit to be the Pope. But did we just select the worst of them all? And that's what the movie, I feel like, kind of slowly, like, not teased, but like maybe alluded to. And then all of a sudden they gave, to me, a bigger twist was like, oh, here's what I was born with. And then I didn't find out till later in life. And then you're like, oh, wow. So like, now this is Lawrence, just because of the drama that we just saw unfolded in the church. No way are any of those people are going to be okay with a female becoming Pope.
Exactly.
And now Lawrence has to now hold that information, because I still believe that he believes that Benitez is still the right choice to be Pope, and the best choice to be Pope. And Benitez was using their perspective on life to give a reason why they are the best Pope and willing to take on those challenges. But yet you don't know the true meaning of it, because the public is not ready for that type of information.
Yeah, I also like that we didn't get the reaction from anyone. Like, you almost learn of the information. Yeah. You come to this place where you realize that this is going to be the path moving forward, because he doesn't give it any. Ralph Fiennes' character doesn't give it any indication of going against it or redoing the vote. But so it's almost, you get like this hopefulness at the end that maybe that this new Pope, and almost like he spent a lot of his time trying to make sure that he honored the late Pope and what his wishes were. And if he hid this person and he went through all this to keep this person in the mix, then there must have been a reason. Like, well, otherwise, why would you have introduced this person to us? Why would you go to such great lengths and make sure that this person was included in this process if you didn't believe in your heart that we probably would have picked this person?
Yeah, and then also, like, I like the statement or the quote you said about doubt. And like, that Pope had an enormous amount of doubt the entire time, but yet, you persevered, you do your job. And you think you make the right decision that best suits, the people. Yeah, and I don't know. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just gonna say, because I don't think that doubt equates to loss of faith. That your doubt, just because you're doubting something, doesn't mean you lose the faith in what you're fighting for to begin with. If that makes sense. Like, just because you're doubting this process doesn't mean that you're doubting your faith in God or whatever.
Yeah, and ultimately at the end of the day, like this, like the ending was, for me, not only like, I wouldn't say shocking, but also just like very fitting for what the story was trying to tell. And I did think it was a little bit weird that we ended on like, a bunch of nuns leaving the church. I'm not sure what that symbolism was on that, but like, it just, Ray Fiennes like looking around, and you see like, a couple of nuns leaving the church, and then that's the end of the movie. I felt like it was a little strange.
So I took that in as a twofold. So initially, like when he confronts the nuns, and this is what it reminded me of. When he confronts the two nuns about Ariame, like the whole interaction with like, well, I'm here to take care of her, but like he kind of asserts his authority as the male in that sense, right? He's like, I want to talk to her alone. But then we come to the end of the movie, where this whole thing uncovered about the new Pope, and then we're watching these nuns happily like walk out of this building. Almost, to me, it gave a sense of like like a new world. Like this is the new age of the church that we're gonna into, and like he's almost hopeful that it would be better for them moving forward.
Yeah, and obviously Lawrence didn't really want to out now the new pope, because they already went through this process of electing a new pope, and they were having all these conversations leading up to the decision of the new pope, and that I think that final conversation kind of cemented on like, yeah, this is the change that we need. Like whether the people know it or not, this is the change that everyone needs. Not only in the city, but also the conclave, within all the cardinals themselves. And yeah, I know I found myself really enjoying this movie. I was shocked in a way that like for the majority of the film I was like pretty engaged. Like it kept me a reason to want to keep watching. Within, I think for me what was good splitting it up was the next voting. It's like, because that was like I feel like there were chapters, and like, okay, here's where we stand in the voting process, and now how this is going to unfold, and now the drama came out. Now here's the next voting, and then to me that was like a good break within the stories to kind of separate certain things, and that part I really enjoyed. And so I give a lot of credit for the script to be kind of separated that way.
I agree, and I found what I was looking for. Okay. So he was accused of simony, Simony. It is the act of buying or selling ecclesiastical privileges such as church offices or sacraments.
Oh, that's right.
So some examples it gives is buying a church position or religious title, selling indulgences, remissions of temporal punishments for sins, or charging for religious services that should be freely given. Simony is considered a serious offense in many religions, particularly Christianity, as it involves a misuse of sacred things for personal gain. So that's what John Lithgow's character was accused of when they told him that he was no longer going to be considered.
Yeah, and then also I think this movie does kind of just bring a light on like the drama within the church.
Oh, absolutely.
Like here is the people that we are choosing to put our faith in and like making responsible decisions, and yet they have all this dirty laundry that the people don't even know about. Just is all within the conclave.
Well,
and like
it's so interesting that he put them as like regular people. Like we look as these popes and cardinals as like these higher figures, but then he shows them smoking and like vaping and like on their phones and shit. So it's like they're still human beings. Like they're still people. They're still people. They're not these like elevated figures. Like they are in a sense in the church, but like they're still human beings who are like putting these clothes on and making these decisions. Like they're still people.
Right. So at the end of the day, as we said, this is an Oscar contender. Conclave just won one of his first major awards by winning best original screenplay, or just best screenplay. I don't think they have a difference between original,
because it would be adapted. I guess if it goes to the Oscars, it wouldn't be original. It would go under adapted because it's based off of a book.
Yeah, exactly. And so so not original. I just want to double check. I don't think the Golden Globes has a distinction between adapted and original, but let's see, winner. Yeah, okay. So the Golden Globes just does best screenplay, and it won for best screenplay at the Golden Globes. It was nominated for best picture, best male actor, best female actor, best director, and best score. And I think the score, speaking of, was phenomenal.
So amazing. It has a lot of elements of like All Quiet's on the Western Front. You can tell just thematically it's the same like composer, and I think it's just so well done. Like once again, like the same thing. And I'll even say the sound design, because there's parts like when he's sitting in the room and you just hear the neon sign blinking in there.
Yeah, I think to your point you mentioned earlier that Edward Berger knows how to shoot a film, and so like a lot of these, these shots were just, it looked so gorgeous, and like it really was kind of elevated the scope of what the story was trying to tell.
I agree.
So I definitely think at the end of the day, this movie can shine a lot of technical awards.
Yeah.
but I don't know if I would put it in a Best Picture, in my opinion. Even though it's in the contention of being nominated for Best Picture, there's an option for that. But me personally, I don't know if it's like if it checks all the boxes for me. But it checks a good amount of boxes.
Checks a lot of them.
And technical, yeah. And also, like, I really enjoyed Ralph Fiennes' performance. I think there's a strong chance he might get nominated for Best Actor.
Yeah, I see that.
But ultimately, like I obviously this is a movie that's going to be nominated for a few things. And but like, where do you see at least the nominations go?
So definitely for adapted screenplay, 100% sound design. I could see it for cinematography and production design. Adapted screenplay, Ralph Fiennes' performance, maybe even best. I don't know. It kind of checks all the boxes for me. Like, I would even say directing. There's not a lot I didn't like. It's just like a little bit in the beginning was a little slow for me. But
yeah.
Like dialogue wise, I think it's just fantastic. Like there's so much to appreciate from what this film had to offer, and for a film that I 100% wrote off. Like, for me, this was gonna be like the Napoleon of this season. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna have to watch this, and I'm sure it's gonna be up for technical awards, which this one is too. So it's kind of in that same vein. Yeah. But the writing in this
has more to offer.
Absolutely. I think this one, yeah, exactly. I think this one has a lot more to offer than Napoleon, because I struggled watching that movie, whereas this I didn't. And this movie is an easy watch. It's a little over 2 hours, so
yeah,
easily digestible.
Yeah, and also, like, I give even more credit to Edward Berger, the director, for giving us a movie like this. For me, it just showcases how strong of a director he is, and put more faith as, like, All Quiet on the Western Front was just not a one-off. He now gave us 2 great films, and so now I'm looking forward to see the next one that he puts out, because so far now he's delivering, now 2 potentially Oscar-nominated films.
Oh, and it's funny. I was just looking at it. It's with Colin Farrell, Tilda Swinton. It's about addiction. Let me.
Oh, his next movie.
Yeah, his next movie. Because I was watching this interview, and he was. That was one of the questions they were asking him about, like, what's his next feat, and he's like, well, we've already shot it. It's upcoming. He has 3 projects upcoming, actually. The Ballad of a Small Player is his next movie.
Interesting, yeah.
With Colin Farrell, Tilda Swinton, and Fala Chen. I don't know who Fala Chen is. Oh, I recognize her. And it's when his past and his debts start to catch up with him, a high-state gambler's laying it low in Macau encounters a kindred spirit who might just hold the key to his salvation. So he in this interview, he related it. This movie is a swan song to the abyss of capitalism. Is his direct quote from Edward Berger.
Interesting.
And it's a movie about gambling addiction. So I'm kind of on board. I mean, I'm on board for. He's not writing it, so this is a little different. It's being written by Lawrence Osborne and Rowan Joff. I don't.
Well, he didn't write the first. He didn't write Conclave.
Did he not?
No, he's not credited as a writer.
You would be correct. And what else is he?
But what I do find interesting is that I forgot we did talk about this. He is on board to write and direct the new Jason Bourne movie.
Now that is going to be interesting. I know I think we were kind of back and forth on, like, whether they should be doing it, but he seems like a good person that could do it.
Yeah, honestly, now after watching this movie, I have more interest in Jason Bourne than I ever have. Right? Like, I don't mind Jason Bourne. I think those are fine movies, but I've never been, like, not ones I typically go back to, after I watch. I think they're fine.
I think he's a director that has so much depth that you wouldn't expect him to be that's like them, like, oh yeah, Edward Berger's gonna direct the next Marvel movie. Like,
right.
Like that, to me, when I hear him directing Jason Bourne, that's what I equate that to.
Right, and that's honestly the same thing for Barry Jenkins, who just came off of directing Mufasa the Lion King.
That's a good point.
Like, no one thought that he would, kind of. A lot of people might refer to as like selling out, It's like, oh, you were one type of director, now you're selling out to direct a big blockbuster. It's gonna be bad or whatever. And a lot of people, I haven't seen it yet, and I probably will not see it in the theater, but a lot of people are saying that Mufasa: Lion King is actually a pretty solid movie.
I've heard mixed things.
So,
I've heard that the movie's good, but that the music is kind of misplaced.
Interesting.
That's been my general consensus from people who I've asked who have seen the movie.
And honestly, that's better than what I think the movie looked like. The trailer looks awful.
Yeah, it does not look good.
It's not look good at all, and that does not make me rush to the theater to go watch it. But other people that come out, yeah, to me that's a better review than I would be okay with.
Yeah, to me that makes me want to, at least if I don't see it in the theaters, at least to peruse it when it hits Disney Plus.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, it looks like it's called Jason Bourne Exodus.
Yeah,
and he's writing and directing it. So now, again, has my interest. Like I said, I believe we talked about it in the news a few episodes back, if not a lot of episodes back. I don't know how long this news was. But with that, your final thoughts on Conclave and your 5-star rating?
I think it's better than what I thought it was going to be. I think it holds a lot of weight on a lot of different technical categories. I kind of see it as the whole package. I wouldn't be surprised if this movie's nominated for Best Picture, just because of all the other combining elements that, as I said before, the meal has to make the meal, has to check all the boxes. And I think it's up there. I think it's up there for at least for Best Picture. So I'm kind of thinking it's going to get a lot of nominations, but maybe only hit the technical awards. That's kind of my early prediction of Conclave. As far as 5 stars, I'm going to go with 4. I'm kind of floating between 4 and 4.5.
Oh, okay. I was actually floating between 3.5 and 4.
Let's go. I'm going to go with 4 then.
All right. I'll go with 4. We'll sidebar. We'll sidebar on the official box office binges.
Do you want to look at numbers? Let me know when you're ready. I got the numbers ready. Whenever you're ready.
Yeah. We can talk about the numbers.
But
this movie
you didn't give your review though.
Oh, my bad. I kind of sharing the same sentiment. This movie was much better than I thought it was going to be. I was kind of enthralled with the story. I love the structure of kind of the voting process of the Pope, and the drama that kept unfolding kept me interested from start to finish. I think it ended stronger than it began. I do agree with you there. And I think the movie's strongest element was its writing. That's what really hooked me. And I feel like in a way, it might be nominated for a few awards. It might even get, I'm not sure if he'll get Best Director, but it could, and I think he will deserve it if he gets it. But I personally enjoyed All Quiet on the Western Front a lot more than Conclave. Yeah. But this is a great follow-up to that film, and I think it's credit to the writing, it's credit to the cinematography. I love the score. Ray Fiennes did a great job. So yeah, I guess in a way, on a few technical elements, I can see where the Best Picture nom is. I don't think it's going to win it.
No,
but I do think that it has other pieces there to qualify, in my mind, for a Best Picture nom, because it was a good movie. And we've seen much worse films get nominated, and we are just questioning why.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Accurate statement.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, I was floating between a 3.5 and a 4. So I'll meet you with the 4. So there you go. But yeah, quickly we can talk about the box office. It didn't really get that much, but it's pretty solid. It opened to $6 million, but at the end of the day, domestically it hit $31.4 million. Internationally, it got $30 million, and then with a grand total of $62 million worldwide, a pretty solid return for. I'm not sure what the budget is on this movie.
I think I read 20 million, maybe.
20? Okay. I can look this up real quick, but yeah, honestly, not a pretty solid return for a movie that was kind of floating under the radar in the midst of a whole bunch of blockbuster films that it was surrounding, because the movie opened in October. So budget of 20 million. So it tripled its budget, which is pretty good. And I'm sure the positive buzz around the movie probably gained some attention coming from that as well. But yeah, there you go. That's our spoiler review on Conclave, and now we're going to be diving into our second spoiler review, which is The Substance, which a film that I had mentioned much earlier before the recognition was coming out for this movie. Demi Moore just coming off of her Golden Globe win this year, and I think it was an outstanding performance from her, and what this movie kind of dived into, and a different side of her we've never seen before. But I think the most important question, because I think the people know how I feel about it. I told you 5 out of 5 stars. You just got to watch the movie. Ernesto, what are your thoughts on The Substance?
Well, first of all, this movie was not at all what I expected it to be. I did not expect this like horror movie walking into, but I think it's a great movie. I think it's a good movie. I think it puts a lot of things like right in your face, and which is done obviously on purpose. Like she did it purposefully.
Yes.
It was just really intense. I think that's the better word I would like to use. It's very like in your face intense, which I'm okay with. But like that last scene at the end, I mean, well, there's a lot to go over. There's a lot. I mean, we have this aging star. I thought the opening was really great. Actually, the whole opening sequence of the Hollywood star, because in that sequence she was telling a story. I also noticed that there's also not a whole lot of dialogue in this movie. A lot of it is told kind of like either subliminally or kind of just like in the scene, like the actors themselves acting it out without like the exposition of like the written word, if that makes sense. Like a lot of it is playing on what's happening in the scene as opposed to what they're telling you.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because that was one of like the things that I noticed in my head, or noticed when I was watching the movie, is like, especially with the opening sequence, it's like that's what got me hooked from the beginning. I was like, oh, that's like, what are they doing? Oh, they're making the Hollywood Walk of Fame, or they're making a star in the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Oh, that's pretty cool. I didn't know they could do it that way. And then you see a name, and then like you just see people walking over it, and then there starts getting cracks, and there's like, oh wow, like there's so much that's being said right now without even a lick of dialogue, and I had no idea what this movie was about. So like I also went in there completely blind, as much as hopefully everyone else does. And as we about to continue talking about this movie, I do highly recommend that we're going to go into... Oh, I hit my mic. We are going into full spoilers of this movie. So if you have not seen it, I truly recommend you watching this movie before you listen to our review, because it is much rewarding experience, depending on who you ask, when you go in there completely blind. I think it enhances it, in my opinion.
I think it does, because it makes a lot of the things that maybe either the trailer has given you, or maybe if somebody's like explained like the basics of like some of the shit that happens in the movie, just to kind of get you to go watch it. I think that if you don't know that it's happening, like it hits you much harder than if you expect it. Obviously, like especially at the very, very end of the film. I'll even say like the beginning, like this whole like how she's cut in the back, like it doesn't even give justice to what actually happened. So the opening sequence is great. I think it's a great setup for the film, and especially since we revisit that exact scene at the very, like that's almost like the film open and closes like with that same image on that same spot for various reasons. And I thought that was really interesting and really well done. But it kind of like right off the rip, it brings you into like, oh, we're into this like this star who has like gone through her what would be perceived as her prime, and now into like the later part of her career. Whereas like which they element that you see very often, like you reach the height of your career and then you're doing like aerobics videos or whatever, or selling your own thing. But it was great is that we have this star who's aged, and we're showing like this moment is showing the passage of her career, like the cracks in it, the food being dropped on it, the very beginning where it's like a spectacle. They had it roped off, and like you went through the whole thing, and everybody's taking pictures, and then like the one guy walks up like, oh my God, let's take a picture with it. And then the next one is, oh, my mom used to like her. My mom watched her. She knows who she is. And then like people just dropping food on it and like act like wiping and smear shit all over it and like it's nothing. And then the big cracks in it because at that point we're at this point in time where people don't even know who she is. Right.
And what a clever way to give us like almost in a way like a montage. Like in other movies, you'll give us a montage or like a recap of someone's life and career, and then get to the point of that. But this did it without any dialogue, but it has the same effect.
Yes, absolutely.
Like we didn't need to know the specifics of her career. We understood it within the Hollywood Walk of Fame star. Like we get it, and then we see Demi Moore in these workout videos. Like okay, this is where her career is now. It's like instantly gets you within less than 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm. And I thought it was really interesting, like especially like, you know, she she's doing her video and then she goes into the bathroom, which ends up being the men's bathroom, and I thought it was really interesting is every time they showed Dennis Quaid's character, like I felt like the lens was always like very up close and almost like bug-eyed, like, especially when they were eating lunch, and they just always made it a point to make him look gross, like he was just very gross and just like a gross human being. And like I was reading this interview where she was saying that yes, Dennis Quaid ate about 2 kilos worth of shrimp. Like,
oh my God!
Like as he's pounding it, and I just thought that was so gross because maybe they do that because eating shrimp like that, when you order shrimp like that at a restaurant, like that's a lot of money. So that's almost like kind of calling back to the Conclave where like that's a kind of like an establishment of power. Like, oh, well, I have the money. I can just eat all these shrimp and I'm just going to shove them in my face because I'm already moving on to the next thing, especially since he's trying to dismiss her and let her go. And he was like, they just made him look so like bug-eyed. It was just so like the cinematography in this movie is just so deliberate and just very, I felt like it was very intimate. We get a lot of these like close-up shots. Like literally you're in Dennis Quaid's face and his mouth as he's like slobbering all over the shrimp. Like to me, that was like out of all the gross things, that's probably one of the grossest scenes is watching him like shove these shrimps in his mouth.
and it's crazy that you said that going to the end of the movie, but yet that was the grossest thing you saw. No. It was him eating shrimp. And I think that, to me, that visual, like it's just so off-putting.
Yes,
like I felt uncomfortable just watching the scene play out because it's meant to be uncomfortable.
Well,
like to your point, like every time we see him, it's basically this close-up. Even the wide shot that we got of when she was in the bathroom, like there was, I think they were cleaning the women's bathroom, so she went to go use the men's bathroom, and the shot never moved.
Yeah,
and he just walks into the frame, walks into the bathroom. And I'm assuming we realized that he was using a urinal, but he walks right up to the camera, and like he's having this like basically like this horrid conversation about letting her go, not knowing that she's in the bathroom, and like he's just taking a piss and like not washing his hands. We're seeing it all up in this close, and then he leaves the frame. It's like that's who this guy is, and like that's the first time we basically see him, and we already hate him.
Yeah, or the next time is that also very close shot, but it's him and all those other. This is closer to the end when he's talking to Margaret Qualley, and he's like it's that same kind of bug-eye view, but it's like very close and very tight on them as a collective group. And it's just or even when she's in that long hallway and he's on the other side, but they deliberately make it look like extra long, and there's this massive space between them that they have to then reach each other, and then these walls that were once filled with like the ages of her career are now completely wiped away. This is like after he's already let her go, and they're starting the search for the new one, and this is where she decides what happens that causes her to go to the doctor. There's something that happens.
She got into a car crash.
That's what it is. That's right. She gets into the car crash and she meets the nurse who gives her the information about the substance, and she calls and she gets it. And I thought it was really interesting. And this is actually something that my wife pointed out, is that the person who was always, at least in the beginning, who was always sent, who always had to do the work was Elizabeth. She had to go.
Yes.
She had to go to the pharmacy to this sketch part of town and all this nasty shit to go get her stuff. It wasn't meant for Margaret Qualley's character to get it. So I thought that was an interesting observation that, you know, once she gets the initial badge, she goes home, and then we get into this like crazy fucking scene of her splitting into the other human being, which we later come to find as Sue. And like, I was reading an interview, and she was saying the construction of that scene was just so hard, like, because it took several weeks. Like, she talked about the complexity of shooting through mirrors and how she doesn't recommend it. The complexity of the multiple eyes. They had to use multiple different. She made it a point to say multiple different types of cameras. So she said in order to achieve that effect of that very close up of the eyes splitting in two, it took them over 2 weeks to construct that scene in production and in post production. She faced a lot of challenges synchronizing the camera shot. From when we go to the camera shot to the POV shot, there was a lot of like just technical things that they had to accomplish in order just to achieve that. And that I thought that was really interesting, because some of the most pivotal scenes happen in this bathroom. And even production wise, like the whole apartment, how it has like this very open and like very high status view to it, even though there's like literally no furniture in there. There's like a table, the TV, and you get this massive window that has her poster across from it. That has, well, initially her poster, and then later turns into Sue's poster. And then it's her poster, and then they face each other. So then it's like the old her and the new her facing each other, facing off in the movie.
Yeah, I don't know if the billboard was there in the beginning. I think she just had a view of the city, and the billboard showed up after Sue became the new the new it girl on television.
Yeah, they made it a point to say, and I know I'm kind of jumping around, but they, that the substance will give her a new you. And I know you kind of mentioned it. It is that there is some air of like it could be Ozempic, but I think it's more of just the diet culture and the sexualization of women, and always feeling like they have to be on their best, and that being younger is always the best, and not necessarily like thinking of you aging as like a graceful thing, like feeling like you're always past your perfect point. I mean, and imagine somebody coming up in this industry where she's constantly being reminded of what she used to be, like the posters, walking back all these old posters of a younger version of you that you'll never be able to obtain. So it's like just completely highlighting the unattainable beauty standards that are set upon mainly women in this day and age, because men, the thing is like when men get gray, like they think of it as like a graceful thing, as opposed to women, they feel it's like, well, I have to cover this because that means that I'm no longer beautiful. And I think that ties into it too, where like you don't feel the beauty that's already like within yourself.
And even to the point, like she also, before they started injecting herself with the substance, she threw that snow globe at her, the poster of her younger self.
Yes.
Like she's like, it shows quite literally the cracks of like how this is like, basically she was almost forced to retire because she kind of aged out in the role that she had. And she got like this very like pity goodbye, not even, it's like you're useless to us, we're gonna throw you away like trash. And then she decides to, based off the recommendation of the nurse, to go ahead and try the substance because it's what like you think you want, like you want to get back to that beauty. And what's crazy about this scene, like the scene in the bathroom, like first, well, before I even get into that, I want to know if there was a book. There's got to be more instructions on how do you apply and activate the substance, because it was very simple. It's like, do this, do that, and you're good to go. And I was like, she's doing a lot more than just a one sentence instructions. Like, where is the book? I wonder where the book is, because she knew exactly what she needed to do, and with flawlessly. So like either I want to know, like, does she have a medical background? Because like does she minor in nursing or something? I don't know. But like I was quite shocked at how like precise she knew, and especially with the spinal fluid. Like how does she know that? Like no one had to say you had to collect spinal fluid. Like that to me like boggled my mind the whole time. But there was also a sense in this movie where like obviously there was a large amount of nudity in it, and so much so that like there's not a lot of points where I feel like it's necessary in a movie. Like that's a choice to have a character naked for whatever reason they have. But this one I felt like was one of the few times where I felt like it was absolutely necessary.
Yeah, it was very deliberate.
Yes. Like it drove the point home of this body horror of like you're not happy with what you have, and like you are always striving for a younger version of yourself. For the most part, at least this movie was portraying, or a different version of yourself, or a better version of yourself, or going back to the glory days of what it used to be. And I think the nudity really honed in, like kind of giving us a visual of that, of like not accepting your body.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting that, you know, they had both characters do it because Demi Moore is a beautiful woman. Like, and for them to use her, like, and somebody who's been in Hollywood for so long, it's like, I think even intimately she probably knows the ins and outs and like really understands like what this film was trying to portray. Like, not necessarily saying it's her, but it could be her because just because she's been in the business for so long, and she's kind of like experienced that of like being a young actress and now being, you know, a more seasoned actress.
Right. And like seeing that, like kind of like the representation of like looking at your body and not approving of it. And then like you literally see a new version of yourself come out of your old body. I shouldn't say old body, your other body.
Yeah, because they are one. There is no them. There's no you and her. There is only one.
And then you see her basically doing the same thing, but like in Demi Moore's sense is like, oh, I don't like what I'm looking at. And then you have Margaret Qualley who's like, oh, I love what I'm looking at. Like this is the best version of myself. And it's like it literally was a scene back to back of each other.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's interesting that even right from the beginning, you can see it right there in the poster, like, you know, that's how she comes out of her. But then, like, even right off the rep, like you submitting to this, even without the dangers that the movie presents later on, you've already been affected and you've already permanently scarred yourself to this process, even without the dangers that are included with it. Like, this is just the base of what comes with it. Like, you have this massive scar along your spine for where this person literally was born out of you, you know. And then every week you're subjected to switching consciousness, you're switching person back to back, and that's if that person, I guess the person that you think you are, because they are the same person, they are not two separate people, where you're once again like infected and like succumbing to the power of this new position because you're in love with all the attention and like accolades that it's garnering. Like, you're getting all these jobs and you're getting all these things and you're being promoted for all these different positions, whereas your old self is literally wasting away because she's supposed to switch every week, but she kind of figured out that if she just taps some spinal fluid, that she can get another day. And then we slowly see that. Once she figured that out, we see the slow build of this film. I mean, she literally built another room in the bathroom to hide her old self, like literally secluding off her old self so she can live this new life, you know, with her boyfriend there. And then like that whole scene where like she starts to like lose consciousness of being this person and she's got to like rush to the bathroom and inject herself for another day, like that very first time, and it becomes like this very euphoric feeling. And then we switch back and then she's got like a little dead finger, just one little dead finger, but it's an indication of what can happen if that person continually takes more and more and more. And then we see that obviously progress like substantially to the end. Like she literally took it to the extreme to where she was pulling like black goo out of her spine, and they're like, That was really funny. Every time she would call that number, like they almost sound annoyed. Like anytime, yes,
503.
yes, 503. Like geez, like the customer service at the substance is like 503 is calling again. Yes, no, are you not listening? You're the same person. No, you're gonna kill her. You need to switch back.
well, now that like it's funny that like. Yes, the movie kind of iterated that they are the same person, but did you feel like there were moments that the one did not know what the other was doing?
Yes.
Because there were moments where I was like, if you are the same person, aren't you aware that you are doing the things that you're doing, younger or older self? And then on top of that, like if you're doing this process and you're not reaping the benefit of like say your better self, then what was the whole point of doing it?
Yeah. Well, she got greedy.
They have to be.
She got greedy with her position. She's like, she initially told Dennis Quaid, her new manager, that I can only work every other week, and we'll work with you. And I'm sure that they would have, but then all these opportunities started presenting itself. Oh, well, we need you to do this. Oh, well, we need you to do this. And then that's what started the snowball effect of what leads to the end of the film.
Yeah, but do you believe that the older version knew what the younger version was doing, because there were moments where I was a little bit confused, like they were a separate consciousness, but they also were aware of the substance.
So I think it's yes or no. I think that they each separated themselves because they wanted so bad to be separated from each other that you almost like close that part out, like you don't even like admit to those memories, like because you already foresee it as that's another person, even though you share memories, you're keeping yourself separate. But there is a lot of stuff where she's saying, well, look, she's doing this, like, but maybe she's aware, but she feels like she's not in control because she is thinking that they are two separate people and not understanding that that it is her making those decisions as a younger version of herself, because she's so enthralled with this younger version of herself that. You get what I'm saying? Like she almost like splits her personality.
Yeah, and honestly, the second time watching it, I was basically kind of leaning in that direction too. It was like a split personality. Mm-hmm. Like she chose to like just omit what the other person was doing, treating it as two when it should have been always one.
Correct.
Like you get to reap in the benefit of being this quote unquote better version, but then you also have to go back to kind of a recharging moment. Like you have to like let it breathe. You can't be selfish with it. But yet, obviously, we saw that's where it led to. I think one of the strongest points in this movie was when after like Margaret Qualley like just wanted to use it for one extra night because she was hooking up with that guy, and then Demi Moore wakes up and you have the finger, and there's this imperfection, and then she calls like, "Hey, there's some misuse. How do I get rid of it?" And then the people on the phone is like. Whatever is done cannot be undone. So then, like, okay, now you have a choice to kind of live with this. Like, you have no choice. You have to live with this imperfection that is here. And then she decides, because she feels like she's at a low point, she's gonna go on a date with someone who treats her with high esteem, who thinks she's the most beautiful person in the world, to kind of boost her ego a little bit. But for whatever reason, and then there's multiple reasons, and this movie did this with no dialogue. She got dressed. She made sure that she was looking nice. Her makeup was good. And then walking out the door, she catches herself. Like, no, I'm not pretty enough. She walks further. He's like, no, I am. Walks further, sees the billboard, sees the younger version of herself, saying, I'm not that person. I'm not as pretty as that. Goes in, changes, redoes her makeup again, makes her feel good, walks out, couldn't open the door. She chose not to leave. And that to me that was such a powerful scene that had very little dialogue. And that was all on Demi Moore's performance of just that visual representation of you don't feel like your best self. And therefore everyone else is going to judge you for not being the better version of yourself. Or people are going to think that you are lesser or think you're ugly. And yet that no one's thinking that. It's just you internally, mentally. Like she couldn't get past that. And then that was the catalyst of like, I need to stay young forever because this is the best version of myself. And I feel like that was one of the strongest moments in the movie and like the turning point of the movie of why Margaret Qualley was kind of abusing the substance.
And I think that scene points to like her, not necessarily, not imperfections. That's not the word I want to use. I want to use
insecurities.
Thank you. That's exactly that's what I meant. Her insecurities, because like, just like you said, like she made it all the way to the door, and then she is the one that stopped herself because she didn't think that she was good enough, and then that obviously spiraled into that scene where she like completely messes herself completely up, and then just ignores her phone, and this guy's like blowing up her phone. And then, but what also, when you, with her saying with the finger when she called them, I thought it was really interesting that they told her, you know, what can't be undone, but you can stop now if you want.
Yes.
Like you can, you don't have to keep going any further. So at that point, she could have lived with just a little broken dead finger, but then she continued on. It wasn't until we see this massive abuse of power from Sue, Margaret Qualley's character, that she tapped her until she literally couldn't tap her anymore. They basically told her, you have to switch in order to generate more spinal fluid for you to tap. Like you have,
right, which took 3 months, by the way.
Yeah, it took 3 months, which is a lot. So then by the time she comes back, I mean, and the amount of prosthetics, and besides the thing, besides the thing at the end, like even this point, they made her like this little old decrepit woman, and I thought that it was just so well done. But yet once again we have this conversation, and it wasn't until this point where she became like this thing, like that she decided that she wanted to reverse. I mean, it was to the point where she was sitting on the couch and she was like almost like stuck to the couch. I also thought it was interesting that in the switch, in that back and forth, that they made her, that anytime you were with Elizabeth, that it was very like chaotic. Like it was very like in your face chaotic. Like she just sits in front of the TV and like very in your face. Whereas when you're with Sue, everything's like bubbly and perfect and happy, and the music's happy, and there's like everything is light. With her, like everything was dark. And then we get those elements. It just gets exacerbated as we enter more and more into the film, you know. And that it wasn't until that she was at this decrepit old woman point that she decided to get the termination liquid. And even then, even in that moment, she goes to stab her. She gets 3/4 of the way, and she decides that she can't go through with it. So then she starts the reversal process. But that, in a sense, wakes them both up, which is this is the one part I thought was interesting, and then maybe that plays to your theory of like who is who, like who is the real person, because now they're both awake, and then Sue beats that ass, like, to put it lightly. She goes like superhero mode, and she gives her the business. like
what's crazy about that, like you have Demi Moore, who is in like Elizabeth, the decrepit old woman, obviously like hunched over and everything, but she is hauling ass. That she like was running like no one's business, running down the hallway, escaping Sue. I was like, damn, you couldn't get off your chair a minute ago. Now you're hauling ass down the hallway. I was like, holy shit.
Then she puts her at the top of the stairs, and she comes up behind her like a fucking football player, and then just like Spartan kicks her, literally. And I don't know if it's just because she's got her jacked up on all those chemicals. I mean, she's basically like a pool of chemicals with all the shit.
Yeah, she was like a fucking superhero.
Boom! Like, and literally you just see her little body fly across the room.
Like, I feel like, honestly, it was this moment where I was like, okay, we're going...
Shit's off the rails now.
Shit's off the rails, and I didn't even know how far they were willing to go at that point. And so, let's get into it. So, so
she injects her, she beats the shit out of her, and she realizes, like, oh, I don't have enough shit to survive. Like, she's got nothing left. I'm falling apart. Like literally, she's in the room, and like her teeth are coming out, and she's like, "Oh, I got a little bit left of this substance."
Well, hold on. Before that, like she killed Elizabeth. Like she murdered Elizabeth. So at that
part,
hold on, I lost your mic. Go ahead. You lost you for a second. Yeah, we're good. Nope, we lost you again.
Hello.
Now you're back. Now you're back. Again.
Matthew.
All right. Last time.
All right.
Last chance.
She
Go ahead. All right.
she thinks that she thinks that she killed her, but I think later on we see that I think, at least in my interpretation, once we get to the whatever happens late, which we're going to talk about here in a minute, what happens later.
Yeah.
When she gets into that, you can see that Elizabeth is still in there. There's a piece of her in there still somewhere.
In Margaret, I'm sorry, in Sue, a piece of Elizabeth is in Sue.
Yeah.
But Sue and Elizabeth are one, as we said, but like she technically at that moment
killed the old version of herself.
Yes. And then I feel like that is the reason why she was falling apart, because we saw what happened when she didn't have like the spinal fluid in her, when she didn't get like her fix.
Mm-hmm.
We instead got, her just literally just falling apart. And that could be, even her like injecting herself could be another visual like or kind of theme of like plastic surgery. Like in a way,
yeah,
like you know what I mean.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's not as like on the nose about it, but like it could be like you're choosing to take drugs to make yourself look beautiful and all that stuff. Anyway, moving on from that, like she's falling apart. Her teeth is falling out. Then we later found in the elevator that her ear, is just fell out, and then she's stuck on the fact of like, oh, I have like she runs home and finds that she didn't finish the activation, like serum that she was given at the beginning of the movie. And she's like, oh, well, now that I'm falling apart, I'm going to inject myself so a better version of me will come out. But you are the copy. You're not the original. And then we see what they call, what is it called?
Elisa Sue, or this Elizabeth.
I thought it was like Monstrous Sue.
Oh, something Monstro Elisa Sue.
Yeah.
This horrific, and this is what's really interesting, because we're back in the bathroom where we're kind of very similar to the same scene, and we're lifted into this moment where they look at each other, and I feel like this is the first time where like Elizabeth looked at whatever she is and was like almost like she almost was like relieved that like this is the end. Like it's almost like a sense like she like was happy. Like I don't know, like she was like she was like whatever that monster was. But and I think Elizabeth's still there because like what is it on her arm, on her chest?
Yeah, I mean she
see
was
her
like
face
sticking
and
out
she's like like her face is out, and then she's like this monster version of herself, where like completely like in the most horrific thing that could be happening, like whereas like everything before was like these women were like the epitome of what beauty is, and like now she's got like eyes everywhere, she's got like these blood sacs that she's holding whatever's left of her body left in there, and like it becomes this just like this super gross thing where like the boob is like her mouth, and like when she makes it, I thought it was funny she made it up to the stage, and like nobody's questioning that what this monster thing is that has this mask, because then to cover her face she puts this mask, this paper mask of Elizabeth on, and she takes it off, and then this is what breaks out into like basically like the climax of the film, where she's uncovered as this monster, and then everybody in this New Year's Eve thing goes crazy, and then it turns into they start attacking her, and then it turns into like this horrific bloodbath. And to me, like I was fine with everything, and then this is the point where the movie I was like, okay, like I could have done without this. but I get it. But I get it to show the extremes of what that she was trying to portray in the film. Like I totally get that. But for me it was like, okay, like what is happening here? Like this seems crazy just to be crazy.
Yeah, and it's funny that you even like this is the point of the movie, because I rewatched this movie with Megan. It was at this point, like, and she was on board for quite a majority of it. It was this point where she was like, okay. Like
same.
Like it crossed the line. It like I think the monster is like crossed the line, but for me though, I was like, wow, they went for it.
They did. Like, they did go for it.
They went for it, and to me, like I'm like if I was like to give it like stand up in the middle of the theater and just start clapping, I was like, the point is made, and I think and you went when no one thought you would go, like you went far with it. Like I thought it was a bold decision. I don't necessarily agree with everything that happened, but I think the message behind it like was clear, because even so, like when she turned into this monstrous version of herself, like there was a moment of like consciousness of what she was still doing. Like she squeezed into this dress that clearly did not fit her. She was trying out different earrings of where to place it into her body. She like again cut out a face of her like that to her was beautiful. The younger version of Elizabeth was like, oh, like and you know, even Elizabeth was not that far off from that photo. And like you could have just stayed where you are, but yet like, oh, compared to this, oh yeah, an old photo of myself is definitely a better way to go. And like she was delusional at that moment. And then like apparently no one found her and just walked right up on the stage and then just have this bloodbath. And then just like, you know, even we get to the final moments of the film where this monstrous version just keeps falling apart. It blows up all over the middle of the street. And then it continues to take another step further of like this face
of Elizabeth.
Of
all that's left.
It's just like slowly inching her way to wherever. I don't know where. But then like poetically, like she kind of just gives up in front of her star, and how delusional that she is. Just this face version of herself believes that she is, you know, back to her glory days, in like on top of her Hollywood star fame. And like she's like, you have like these twinkles in her eye, and she's like, oh yes, I'm happy, I'm beautiful, people love me, as she literally disappears in front of her star. And then you have a cleaning vacuum or whatever, like a sweep cleaner, a street cleaner, come in and kind of like just removes the blood off of it or whatever it was. And then that's it. You're back to just like, you know, Gone with the Wind in a way.
Yep. As easily as there, she was gone.
Exactly. And to me, like the movie was so original and so bold. I loved it. Like it's not a movie that I would typically go for, but like I think I really understood the message, and like I appreciate like how much in your face it was with it, but still intriguing to watch how this process was going with the substance and how she was able to abuse it, and how like you see these scenes of like trying to deal with one's self, and like you could be like grossed out and be like really fixated on what was on the screen, but the meaning behind it was so much stronger than what monstrous figure they were trying to like. That was just the shock value, but there was so much meaning behind that.
Well, especially because we get this, the whole movie focuses on beauty, the beauty standards, the hypersexualization of women, but then it ends in this in like one of the most horrific endings I've seen in a movie in a long time. And the director actually said something about that whole pump it up, because it kind of calls to that pump it up montage scene where it's like you seeing her hip and it's like you're like basically like it's like softcore porn, like you're like looking at her crotch. And she was saying the montage was really a way to express another kind of violence where hypersexualization can become something that devours you. This scene represents how much the outside world can consume our body, how much the world can reduce our body into pieces, like a butt or a sexy hip. Sue is playing with this as much as she is a victim of it. It represents how the gaze can chop us into body parts. Often that can be our only way to exist. This can be what puts us at the center of attention. For Sue, this is the tool she uses because that is the only one she really knows. It is an endless circle. If you put your value into the external gaze, you will always be dependent on staying perfect. She is a victim of a trap that is impossible to escape. Society asks our bodies to not change and to stay the same. Young, beautiful, sexy. When you are not that, society considers you literally body horror. You are erased because you are considered disgusting. Sue sees this as her only way to be seen, valued at the center of the public space. She uses the hypersexualized image to put her at the center of all eyes, which is, of course, what we see take place throughout the movie.
Yeah. That's a great quote. That's a great quote. I mean, she said she was in an interview.
Yeah, so she did an interview with Hammer and Nail, some kind of random movie podcast. I've never heard it before, but I was like searching for her interviews, and this was one of the quotes from her interview. I also read her Vogue interview where she was kind of talking about the same thing. She mentioned at every age we can find something wrong with ourselves, which can make us feel like monsters. Your image defines you and your self-worth, but I thought I could create something meaningful about these issues. It could also serve as a form of liberation. This was the interview she did with Vogue.
Yeah, another great quote. Like just hammering home all those things that there was not. It was in your face, but was never told to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it was all done through a visual medium.
I'm telling you, I was on board. I was 100% on board. Like until we got to this and I understand why she did it. Like this body horror ending with this monster and this bloodbath. Yeah. And like what I really loved was the ending of like she was holding on to that little bit of sparkle for herself, which is why you see like the dying version of herself holding with whatever consciousness she has left to crawl to her star. And when she made it and she's looking at the palm trees and the stars right above where her name is like she felt that sigh of relief and she felt okay to be released from the world because she had nothing else. She held on to the last thing she had left and now she's able to let go.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Like to me, it was like, and I feel like part of it is like I knew nothing going in. There's no expectations. There were no trailers. There were no I just heard all I heard was like, oh, this movie with Demi Moore came out and it's pretty good. And I was like, yeah, I had an interest. People were kind of raving about it, but it wasn't like within detail. And then I think part of it was just the shock value that honestly the reason why I go to the movies. Like I want to be swept away with the story. I want to be engrossed into what's happening and not know what's coming next and be surprised. And then like when a movie can deliver on that, no matter where it goes, like, and then also stay true to its message and its storytelling, like I give it its flowers. I do agree. Like, again, it's not for me for all the points of the movie, but at the end of the day, like the message around this was so strong. I can forgive the last 15 minutes for kind of going out there in a way.
It's a strong film. It tells a very strong message. And I think, the conversation is more of not is it good or is it bad? It's more of was the message effective? And I would argue that it was. It was very effective.
Absolutely. Like if we go into now talking award season, like we already know that this movie was nominated for a bunch of Golden Globes, but Demi Moore won the only one. I just want to where are we at?
Now, did she get it for Best Actress?
She did.
Yes, right?
Yeah, so this movie was... Well, there we go. This movie was nominated for Best Director, Best Musical or Comedy, which is, I guess one could say this is a comedy, but it's
a dark comedy. It's a dark
comedy. Yeah. Best Screenplay, Best Performance by Supporting Actress, which is Margaret Qualley, and then the only win that this movie got was Best Performance by Female Actor, which was for Demi Moore, which I think she 100% deserved. This was a role like completely, I'm sure, out of her comfort zone. A movie we've never seen her in like this before, and so to kind of really just go out of the box with it and still deliver like this, like wow, like even for her sense, it's like, and I feel like in a way, hear me out. In a way, this is a movie that's very similar to me, like Everything Everywhere All at Once, where it kind of took people by surprise and it brought in a lot of actors that we wouldn't typically see in those roles and really defined that role to make it their own, to make it outstanding. Like it was almost like they were so in tuned with the message that the film was presenting that they gave it their all, and we're seeing that pay off in a big way when it comes to award season.
Okay, I can see you there. So, are you sticking with your 5-star? Or actually, do you want to go over box office first?
Sure. I mean, I know again this movie had a limited run, but we can go over box office.
I think the budget was I think I read 17, little over 17 million.
17 mil. Okay, I can double check on that. But as the time of this recording, the movie looks like opened to about $3.2 million. Again, it was on a limited release. At the end of the day, domestically, this movie got $16.4 million. Internationally is where this movie was probably maybe heavily either, I don't know, promoted or heavily, like a lot of people are looking at this movie internationally because it made $61.5 million, which is crazy considering what it got domestically. And then it earned a grand total of $78 million, which is pretty good, just purely on the international market. And you're right, it had a budget of $17.5 million. So I would say it increasingly made a profit on this.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
And now it's getting all the awards. And I even, like I said, I told you this movie was not on the award circuit radar up until it got nominated for the Golden Globes, and it was being subtly recognized in some of the other ones. And this was like a slow build. A lot of people were talking about, like, right out of the gate was Anora, and Anora was getting, all of the attention. But surprisingly enough, Anora did not win any Golden Globes. And we'll have this more in-depth conversation when we talk about our awards talk when the Oscar noms drop. But like, that's something that's interesting, that out of the gate, Nora was getting all the attention, but yet it's not winning much of anything. And then we have all these other films that are getting some of the accolades that weren't really highly looked at in the earlier on when the conversations were happening. And this, for me, is like that one of those sleeper movies that, like, good word of mouth. We got to see. Now it gained some more traction that this movie is now winning at awards. And so now when it comes to Oscar season, I'm really curious. When it comes to the Oscar noms, I'm curious of where this film lands. And for me, I think, right out of the bat, you have Best Picture, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actress. I'll even go as far as Best Script and Best Directing. But I think, if anything, like, if none of those are winners, it needs to win for Best Makeup.
So I agree with you on all of those. I would also add in cinematography and editing. I mean, you look at the complexity of the Sue's birth scene, like that.
Yeah.
Like, just reading of how, like, the complexity and, like, the challenges she's faced, just from a technical aspect, like, that scene is remarkable. Like, it really looks like her eye. It looks like she's being split into two people, and just using, like, that light tunnel as a way of, like, guiding us from one consciousness to another, I thought was really interesting. I just thought it was really well done. Like, there's a lot of things that are weird about this movie, but once again, like, there's a lot to appreciate.
Yeah, and I feel like, again, going back to the final, like, 15 minutes, it already had me hooked, and I was already invested for so long of this movie. And it's almost a 2.5 hour movie. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes. That by the time we got to the very end of this movie, I was already like, you know what? You can go wherever you want. I'm on board with this. And when a movie can do that, and, like, it kind of be like, I don't know about this, but also, like, wow, we're really going for it. And yet, like, it's like, yeah, okay, like,
we're here.
We're here. I want to see where this ends. And yeah, it was a bold ending, but I appreciate it. So with that, it's 5 out of 5 for me. Where do you land?
I'm gonna go. See, I'm floating. I'm gonna go 4.5, and that's only because of that climax scene. It was so jarring that it pulled me out of the movie for a minute, and I had to pull myself back in. Yeah. But then it brings it back around to a very satisfying, like, ending, with her, like, basically exploding apart and just being that goop of face and whatever chemicals are left flowing through her body.
Yeah.
I thought it had a very, like, even regardless of the climax, I think it had a very satisfying ending, and it tied the whole story together. I think she got her narrative across of exactly the story she was trying to tell. So to me, it was regardless of how I feel about that moment, the movie was very effective in telling its message. So I can't knock it too much. So I think that's why I'm going to go 4.5. And I think, along with makeup and hairstyling, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actress, Best Directing, Best director. I think it really checks once again.
Yeah.
We're at another movie where it checks a lot of the boxes. But as in addition to your list, I would like to add cinematography and editing.
Yeah, I agree with the cinematography. The movie was shot so well.
Yeah,
Like especially like when in the quiet moments where there wasn't much score in this movie, at least from what I could hear, but
there was music.
There was definitely music.
Kind of reminded me of like Challengers, where like like that high intense, like high beat. When you would switch between Sue and Elizabeth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Speaking of Challengers, complete side note: the people who did the score for Challengers won at the Golden Globes, and in my head is like, yeah, that score is fine, but like the Wild Robot, come on, guys, like
you tripping.
You tripping. Anyway, we're getting to that later. But
neither here nor there.
You neither here or there. Yes. But yeah, I think I do agree with you. Cinematography wise, like what this movie was able to do, just visually, and like get your point across without much dialogue. It hands well to like the cinematography lends into the script very nicely. And I think both were able to let itself breathe, as well as give moments to Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley to really chew up the scene. So, like, yeah, this movie has it all, and I'm so surprised that I'm now seeing this getting the recognition that I feel like it deserves. Because I watched this movie thinking it was like this indie movie that no one's gonna see. It is like a hidden gem, but now it's getting the recognition that that I feel like it deserves, all the way getting up to Oscar territory. So I'm happy to see this movie going up the ranks the way that it is, and I hope I see at least get a win somewhere. Like I don't.
It's definitely going to be in the conversation. It's definitely going to at least be in the conversation.
I don't see it winning Best Picture, but I kind of still really want to. But we also have to see what the other movies are nominated to.
We got to see if there's gonna. I mean, next week, January 17th, we'll get our list, and then we'll be our ride. We'll be on our official ride to the Oscars.
Yeah, a month and a half after the nominations. That's our journey. And realistically, about a month, because we want to record before.
Correct.
We want to record before the actual nomination. But yeah, anyway, that is. I was so happy we had this conversation because I really wanted to like get into it with somebody.
Like I got to talk about this.
I got to talk about this movie, and that's the joy of this podcast.
So we're here. That's what I'm here for, Matthew.
Thank you. So yeah, that's our spoiler review on The Substance. We gave you two beefy reviews on some possible Oscar contenders, but now let's dive into our best of 2024. A whole year went by, Ernesto. A lot of great content came out last year. But before we talk about the good stuff, we got to talk about the not so good stuff. And we've always said in this podcast, we don't like to say that a movie was bad or a movie was horrible because it takes a lot to make a movie. But a movie can easily disappoint us. So we like to call this our disappointments of 2024. And the way we're going to have this kind of run is a little different than we've done in the past, is that Ernesto has a few disappointments, I have a few disappointments, and then there's a few that we share. So we're going to start with Ernesto on some of his disappointments of 2024.
Okay, so my main disappointments is probably going to be these three right here. So we have Spaceman, starring Adam Sandler and Kelly Mulligan, and also, if I remember correctly, Paul Dano. He played the space spider. This movie, like coming off of Uncut Gems, like I was like, oh, bet Adam Sandler, like he's real. Like this movie's going to be great. And I love Paul Dano. Like Paul Dano was great. He's great in everything he does. And it just the tone of this movie just fucking put me to sleep. It just wasn't what I expected it to be.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't disagree with you. It was not in my disappointments, but it was an awful movie that we were nodding off.
I really struggled with it, and that was a weekend that my parents came over and they're like, "Oh, we'll just watch whatever you're going to review." I was like, "I'll bet, like it's going to be fine." Like the Spaceman movie is like it seems a little weird, but I think we'll be okay. And I was wrong. Like, that movie was not. It just was not good. It was just not a good movie. And then my two other disappointments are two TV shows that I started and I couldn't finish. Like I started Echo. I watched like the first think maybe the first episode, and then I had no interest to return. And then Upload, we came back with, this is season 3. And season 2, I wasn't like falling off, but I wasn't nearly as interested as I thought I was going to be. And like, I think we watched like 2 episodes and go, okay, I'm good on this. Like, I don't need to waste any more time watching this.
Which is sad because it was a good, like, I remember, like, if we go back and if we go back and like look at our best of that year, I'm pretty sure that Upload was up there as one of the better shows of, when did it start? 2021?
I almost feel like it was. I almost feel like it was in our best of that year.
Yeah, so that would have been 2020. So yeah, I so much enjoyed the first season, and then season 2 took a huge dip. Like they just forgot about the quality of the story. And they kind of lean into their gimmick, which was not the best part of it. And then I remember finishing season 2 kind of unsatisfied. And then I didn't even bother watching season 3.
Yeah, I think for me, season 2, and maybe I was just hopeful that the novelty of like what the show was about wore off. Like it just completely wore off. And then it came to a point where like, okay, we're just stretching now. Like we're just trying to fill time. And then like I just lost interest. And it's upsetting because I loved the first season. I loved the premise and what they were going for. It would have been better. It just would have been better as a limited series.
And it's also, you're absolutely right there. And it's also sad to hear about Echo, because I didn't think it was a bad show. Like I thoroughly enjoyed it. I finished it. I didn't think it was like, it was good. It was, a solid entry into the into the MCU. It doesn't have big strides. It doesn't try to be, but it's a solid 6 episodes, and like it does the job. Like honestly, it's forgettable because I don't remember much about it, but I didn't hate it when I was watching it. Like I thought it was fine.
Maybe I'll give it maybe once Born Again comes, maybe before Born Again, just because it involves Fisk and all that. Maybe I'll give it another shot then. But
yeah, but also going back to Spaceman, man, I remember that was a potential movie we were going to review that week, and we did review it. I don't think it was an episode. No, I think we had reverted it down to we'll talk about it, but we have to come up with something else because this movie was just bad. It was so boring.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
I remember we were like, I don't want to review this.
Yeah, exactly.
We
walked out of it saying, which is weird because sometimes we don't like a movie but we can talk about it, and this one is just like there's nothing in the tank for this one.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're not typically like, we'll give it a shot and we'll give it, we'll talk about it like we will in some of our other movies that we're about to mention. But this one, like, it was so boring. Where it's like, I can't keep up a conversation for more than 5 minutes about this.
Yeah, like I couldn't even tell you. I don't even remember what it was about. I think he was having issues with. Yeah, I think he was having issues with his wife, and then like his idea of running away was like going on this space mission for years instead of staying on Earth and fixing his marriage, and it took the space spider Paul Dano to help him figure it out.
And honestly, when you brought this up and said Spaceman, I was like, didn't that come out last year? No, it came out early February. I was like, wow.
Doesn't 2020? But I feel, and this is just a side note, like I feel like 2024 was like 2 years. Like there are movies that we're going to talk about, and I go, like when I was compiling my list, I go, that did come out in 24. Like, yeah. God damn, that was a long ass year. Same amount of days as the year before. It just felt infinitely longer when you compare it to the content that came out. Yeah.
But yeah, all right. So some of my disappointments. First of which is Ghostbusters: Frozen Empire. Really compared to, and a lot of this is kind of a comparison to other people's work that kind of leads into the disappointment. Again, first being Ghostbusters Empire, really coming off of Ghostbusters Afterlife, such a strong movie with so many different layers to it, especially with Jason Reitman directing it. And he said he would never direct a Ghostbusters movie, but he found a story that would work for him, and kind of honoring his dad, Ivan Reitman, who did the first 2 Ghostbusters. There was so much heart in that movie. And a lot of people who liked the first original 2 Ghostbusters didn't like Afterlife because it was a departure. But I thought that made that movie even stronger. So the fact that this movie kind of didn't do any of that and just kind of went back to your classic Ghostbusters routine. A lot of people said that this was like very reminiscent of the animated cartoon, which I never saw. And bringing in the old actors meant nothing to this movie. Yeah. It just felt like a cash grab, and it didn't have the heart that Afterlife had, and therefore I was disappointed with it.
Also, the trailer was very misleading. Like,
it was.
Look, this poster with them in the red jackets never happens.
Never happens.
Doesn't happen in the movie at all. That scene, this main scene where they're on top of the building in front of this frozen Empire city, guess what? Doesn't happen. Yeah. You never get to see the Frozen Empire. And I think that's what the problem is. It's like there was a promise of what the movie should have been. And then when we didn't get that, it's like, oh, okay. It just seems like this movie seems like a setup and an in-between to whatever they want part 3 to be. Yeah,
and that's not what a movie should do.
Correct.
Another one I was disappointed with was John Krasinski's If. John Krasinski as a director has been strong with A Quiet Place Part 1 and Part 2. And now coming out with If, with following this more kid-like story of like these almost kind of a ripoff of Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. And this movie just totally did not make any sense. It was overly dramatic for a kid's movie, yet too childish for adults to even want to care to watch. It was like, I don't know where John Krasinski's mind was with this movie, comparing how strong A Quiet Place 1 and 2 were. And I know that he was having a good run with Jack Ryan, so I don't know what happened with this one. It has a star-studded. Even Ryan Reynolds, just a few months before Deadpool Wolverine started this movie, and like even he didn't make any sense in it. It was just odd all the way around, and kind of now questioning John Krasinski as a director of like, I really got to see his next movie to see if it was like I only can succeed under the parameters of A Quiet Place, but I was really hoping that he could stretch his directing skills into something like this that we can all enjoy, and yet it just didn't hit the mark for me. Another one that was disappointing was Argyle. Matthew Vaughn. To me, Matthew Vaughn can do no wrong. I didn't mean that to rhyme, but it did. And he came out with Kingsman. He came out with Kick-Ass. Like, those were strong movies in my opinion. And then Argyle, which was a huge swing. And I feel like part of it was that it was hyped up in my mind that he bought a treatment of a book because he was so enthralled with the story. So much so that we read the book that was boring as hell.
We followed this news from the initial inception.
Yes.
When the news came out that he bought the treatment, we were like, oh, well, and we followed it from that piece of news all the way until when it was released.
From its star-studded cast as well.
Yeah. I didn't hate it as much. I thought it was super campy, but it was fine. The book, I actually thought was the book interesting? No, the book was not interesting. But it was a movie. The movie was like super campy. And I think my problem was that I wanted the book to be a relation to the movie, and it was not that whatsoever.
Not even close.
The only thing that was related was the name of the book that they were talking about in the story. That's the actual only connection. Like, the whole movie is completely different.
Also, they hyped up that even Dua Lipa was doing the score and was in this movie, and she was only in it for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And even Henry Cavill was barely in the movie as well, and he's in the front of the poster. Yeah. So I feel like a lot of parts were misleading, and again, tonally, this movie did not fit. In a way that maybe it could have gone the same vein of other Matthew Vaughn movies, but ultimately it just didn't hit for me. And I feel like part of it is myself, because we hyped it up for what it is. We hyped it up as far as read the book, the news, the casting, everything around it seemed like it was gonna be a great film, and yet it just didn't hit the mark with it. And the last disappointment for me, at least separately, was Moana 2. I know we had recently talked about this movie last week, but ultimately, compared to the first movie, this sequel does not hold up at all. And I feel like it's a disappointing Disney sequel compared to other sequels like Ralph Breaks the Internet and Frozen 2 of the modern Disney films. I feel like they've been doing a really good job of keeping up with solid sequels. And I feel like this one, story-wise and musically, just couldn't even, not even on the same ocean as the first movie.
I see. I could see that, but I didn't hate it. I didn't hate it as much. I thought the movie was catchy. The music was kind of interesting, but it definitely doesn't hit the same way the first one does. But I mean, but I'm also clouded by the fact that my daughter loved this movie.
Sure.
Like we all went as a huge family. Like I think like our entire Orlando family, like my mom, my dad, my brother, like all of us here who live in Orlando, we all went collectively together as a family and watched this movie. So it's hard for me to taint that experience, but I understand what you're saying. I get what you're saying, but I'm also tainted by
movie theater
I had a great movie theater experience with family, so it's hard for me to not like it because it's tied to a very good experience.
Fair enough. That's fair. Like sometimes that's all it takes is the experience. Like I went to go see this movie with Megan in the middle of the night. Like it was like one of the last showings and we wanted to watch it. So like it's like, it wasn't overly special or surrounding it. We just really want to watch this movie. We had a good time just like having fun with it ourselves, but ultimately like I think I nodded off in this movie. And yeah.
I mean, it's not like a pay attention movie. You're not watching The Conclave. You're watching Moana 2.
Yeah. And again, who do I know? This movie's on its way to making $1 billion. So
exactly, that's the other thing. Like this movie's making a lot of money.
Yes. Like I don't know where I think we're very high up on the topic. Let's see where we're at financially with this movie. Let's see, Moana 2. This movie has now grossed $961.9 million. Unbelievable.
And it's internationally made over 500 million in domestic. So it's actually doing better overseas than it is here in the U.S., which I think is also very interesting. But yeah, we're very close to hitting $1 billion. It 100% is going to hit $1 billion.
It's going to hit it.
Theater. They're going to leave it in the theaters until it hits $1 billion because they want to say that it's $1 billion movie.
If not, here's a sing along. We're going to give you a sing along.
And I think Wicked proved that, but this is a movie that could, Moana 2 is 100% a movie that could survive on a sing-along. They could easily do a sing-along for this movie, which is something they should have done for, like, Frozen 2. Like, they should do sing-alongs in theaters, because that's what's going to get people. I think that's an untapped thing that we don't see very often. Like, when was the last time you saw a sing-along head into theaters?
I mean, aside from Wicked, obviously, like it's been a minute. Yeah,
that's what I mean. Is like Wicked has kind of brought that apart, where like usually sing-alongs that's like a streaming or at home thing.
Yeah,
but really, it works really well as a group experience of everybody in the theater. I think because I've heard many people, especially for Wicked, were like, "Oh, we want to go see the sing-along." We were thinking about going to go see the sing-along. If I had the time, I probably would have gone to go see it.
Yeah, then people can belt out the songs. It was almost like don't like ruin the theater experience for other people, but for the sing along, you're welcoming that.
Exactly, like you're bringing them there specifically for that. So I think that's an interesting aspect that maybe more movies like Moana, Frozen, those Disney movies that they call for that. I think that even Mufasa, like give us a sing-along version of Mufasa. Like the people who really loved it will go back, will go and see it. You never know. You're gonna get you're gonna get something.
Yeah, very much. But yeah, now let's talk about some of the collective ones that we've had. And
oh boy,
okay,
top of the list right there.
Yeah, let's save the two for last, shall we? Let's talk about Kinds of Kindness.
Oh,
this is again when we Ernesto were developing our list. This is the ones that we had both shared on our list, and I think it's easy to say that Kinds of Kindness was a huge letdown coming off of Yorgos Lanthimos' Poor Things, which was a phenomenal film, and then immediately his next film is this, where it just doesn't compare.
What I think is really upsetting is that we both thought that I think that I had high hopes for it, mainly because of the cast. I mean, the cast is phenomenal. And like we looked at his last movie, which is very absurd, and this movie was the same in that kind of sense. But he added this layer of like this triptych fable, which I think was like, for me, it was like too much to keep up with. Like either you're going to be absurd or you're going to tell this fable story. Like, this mix of both is just very off-putting, especially for the narrative that you were trying to tell. So I just felt like he got lost in trying to be weird. And that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, and honestly, you make a good point because you can even draw the connection between Poor Things and The Substance, where like you can do absurd things.
Yes.
But if your story is airtight and you can have people joining along on this journey, like thematically and narratively, they're willing to forgive all the absurd things that are happening around it because you have this through line that people can connect with. And with Kinds of Kindness, it just wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
And
I agree.
it's so odd how you can come from one movie that's literally winning Oscars to this next one where it just like doesn't hold up, not even close. That was a little bit of a disappointment. Another one that we both shared, which is funny because we didn't talk about this. We just made our lists. And then this is where, our connections lie. And we both mentioned The Umbrella Academy season 4. What a letdown of an ending that was.
So bad. Like, I think the problem is that because this is listed as the final season, like this is going to be the end, and like this is the season 4, and like season 1 is like that's like top tier Netflix. Like to me, like season 1 is very, very strong. And then here's another show that just slowly over time, like the quality each season just got watered down little by little until we get to season 4 and whatever narrative they threw together in 2 and 3 and they needed to close out in 4, like it just became like a big nothing burger. Like nothing happened. Yeah. Like literally, okay, spoiler alert, everybody dies. So all that needed to happen is for them not to exist. But the people that they brought together and lived, they get to live in their own little universe. But it was just so convoluted. Like, so none of this matters. They get all these extra and like people get extra powers. There's like this one good part, which is like this weird love story that they wove together with time travel in multiple universes and how time is different in different areas. I thought, to me, that was the only interesting narrative within that entire season. Everything else was garbage.
Yeah, it only had 6 episodes, so clearly they didn't really have much to say.
Yeah.
But then with that, you had like this one singular episode that I thought was done very well, but it had nothing to do with the overall story.
Which is at the what's up?
5 and the other.
So the same thing, the same storyline. Yes.
Yeah, like great singular story, nothing to do with the plot.
Correct. Yep.
And like out of your 6 episodes, you put that one in there that led nowhere. That ultimately led to nowhere.
And then arguably the strongest episode of the entire season.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Let's talk about Venom: The Last Dance. What was that movie? What did we put on our screens?
But I think the Venom 3 is the same thing as a Madam Web conversation. Like Sony they're just throwing shit at the wall, trying to see what's gonna stick and trying to like weave together whatever, tie themselves into MCU however they can again. We saw it with all the Sony Spider-Mans leading into No Way Home. Like I feel like everything that they do from then on out is just like trying to link any of them to MCU. Like who knows? Like all these characters, they could come back because maybe their movies are just garbage, but these people as these characters are good.
Yeah, I don't know. It's almost like
I'm trying to reach. I don't know because both of these movies, Madam Web and Venom 3, were awful. And Craven 3, and then Craven, never saw it. I haven't seen it yet, or I don't know if I'm going to see it anytime soon, is listed to be just as bad as these movies.
Which is crazy because, like, we reviewed Morbius as its own episode, Madam Web as its own episode, and then we had tied Anora and Venom into one episode.
Yes.
We got drained by the lack of care from Sony that we didn't even bother with Craven, and that was the one I was looking forward to the most.
Yes. Yeah, I 100% agree. Agree.
And by the time we got there, I was like, I don't care. I don't care to watch this movie. You've proven time and time again that you do not care. So why should I? Why should I give you my money? Why should I go to the theater and waste my time on watching yet another disappointing Sony Marvel movie? And like Sony as a whole, Sony Marvel is just the biggest disappointment of the year. You had 3 movies to Marvel's, the MCU's 1. And Deadpool Wolverine, as we'll talk about, is like, the rise of Marvel getting back to form. And for me, a story that was treated with so much care and love to the fans. And then you have these Sony Marvel movies that don't even know that their fans exist. They don't care. To the
point that after Craven came out, they pretty much stated that they're done with the Sony Marvel movies. They realize that they don't know how to make them. Maybe that's what it is.
And there were some small rumors, which I don't know how much I want to read into, but there were rumors that even Sony was looking into selling Spider-Man and its properties back to the MCU because they're not getting their investment out of what they want, and they only can see that we're only getting an investment when we do Spider-Man movies, and MCU has a hand in it.
I'm curious because like them lending, basically Sony lending, Tom Holland's like the true Spider-Man to MCU, that character and all those iterations work really well. But anything that Sony has done separate from MCU, it's almost like MCU is like they're just waiting in the corner. It's like, oh yeah, you can make your movies. Oh no, we're not going to help you. No, you're gonna have to. You're gonna have to figure that shit out on your own, or you can just sell it back to us. Maybe that's what needs to happen.
Whichever one you want. Like it for them, it's too far gone for Sony to try to like do their own.
They prove they can.
And the only success, the only success story that they have is with the Spider-Verse films.
Animated, correct?
But you have an animated. Like you prove that you can like. It's almost in a way, and it's weird to say this, but like you need Spider-Man in these movies to make it successful. But I don't think that's your problem. I think it's a clear cash grab that you were trying to do, and the audience is no longer buying into that.
Yeah, there's a clear lack of care for characters. Like Madam Web is like both of these movies are just garbage. Like who watched those and goes, send that shit to print? That's it. That's it right there.
And almost in a way, I feel like Venom 3 was more disappointing than Madam Web because you had 2 movies to back up Venom 3, and like Venom 1 was fine, didn't really care for it, but it was fine. Venom: The Last Carnage, you put Carnage in it, people want to see that.
That was entertaining for that.
Exactly, it was entertaining enough that I was like, okay, so I have an expectation of like these movies are entertaining enough that I'm willing to go and watch it, and you didn't even deliver that. Like your story was all over the place, boring, nonsensical, and like, you brought a whole bunch of like symbiotes at the end that made it slightly interesting. But like you already lost me in the first hour and a half of this movie. Whereas like I don't care about your ending anymore.
I agree.
Like you didn't really solidify this relationship between Venom and Eddie Brock. It's like it just doesn't matter. And then with Madam Web, like I know I said these movies aren't bad, but like you didn't even focus on your ADR in this movie. When you can't even focus on your production value to make it look like a movie, it just shows how much you did not care about this movie and you let it to go out there. When people are like taking out of the movie because the words don't match the mouth, that's a problem. And when you can't even give me the basic elements of a film to make it look like a film, then like, what are you doing? What do you do? So
I'm just glad that they decided that they're done with this, that they're like actually done with those movies. But who knows?
Yes.
Maybe they do. Maybe they can sell those properties back to the MCU, to Marvel, and then that would be great because that would just further strengthen the MCU brand and what they can bring out and what they can put out.
If Marvel can buy back all the Marvel, like the Spider-Man characters, they're like, man,
we did it.
We got Fantastic Four, X-Men, and Spider-Man. Fellas, we got the next 10 years on lock.
Yeah.
We're good.
We did it.
We got people's money. We did it. We don't have to pay Robert Downey Jr. anymore.
We don't need you to be Dr. Doom.
Oh, man. I'm still looking forward to Avengers Doomsday. That'll be an interesting movie.
I'm sure it will be.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. Enough about the bad stuff. enough about disappointments. Let's get into our top television shows of 2024. So Ernesto, we'll start with
So
you.
I'm going to start with kind of two shows that Kevin Can F Himself is definitely on my top list. An Interview with a Vampire is more on my honorable mentions. But the only reason I talk about these shows is because like these are two shows that are already out. And Kevin Can F Himself is already gone and done. It was a limited series, but it is fantastic television. Like it is, like narratively, is just so well done. I think the cinematography is so purposeful in how they tell the story, and it just like I was like as soon as I started watching it, I was completely captivated. So it's definitely up there. And Interview with the Vampire is kind of the same thing. The writing, it's not done, but I'm behind. Whereas I'm watching what's dropping on Netflix. So Netflix, I believe, is a year behind what's being put out. And I'm totally locked in. Like, it's such a good show. Like, I'm not going to sign up for AMC Plus, but I will wait a year until it drops on Netflix. So and that's just a testament to, like, how streaming hits different audiences. Because some people maybe really enjoyed the show, and then that caused them to get an AMC Plus membership, or at least did the free trial to watch the next season as it's dropping now. But it's a show that's just really well done. The writing is really well done, and just narratively, it's just a really AMC has they every now and then, you know, they get some good ones, and actually both of these are AMC shows if I remember correctly. But yeah, so Anne Rice's Interview with a Vampire is my honorable mention. Kevin Can F Himself as one of my top TV shows. Just really, really well done.
Yeah, so I have a few that I thought was worth mentioning. Agatha All Along. What a great turnout for, like I said, Marvel. MCU had a great year this year, in my opinion. And it's one of those shows that I remember talking to you, Ernesto, and saying, like, what's the point of this show? Why do we need this show? Like, why does Agatha need her own show? Like, she was a great villain in WandaVision. She does not need her own show. And Marvel told me, shut the fuck up and watch this. And I was like, damn, all right. Like, aside from the ending, I thought the ending was not as strong as the rest of the movie, or the rest of the series. Yeah, but the journey that we went on, like, through us watching this podcast, and also, like, Megan thoroughly enjoyed the show. So we were having a great time watching it together. And I was definitely not expecting that experience. And also that banger, down the road, down the witch's
I also
road.
thought it was interesting that this is a show that we dedicated watching week to week. And this was kind of like we were doing that and Penguin at the same time. But I thought it was interesting to go through this show week to week, as opposed to usually when we just go like kind of back and forth, like maybe you'll watch it and then I'll watch it and then we'll kind of sparingly talk about it. So it was actually nice to follow this show week to week and kind of narratively break it down. I don't remember if it's in my in my honorable mentions, but it is definitely worth bringing up. It was one of the stronger series, especially since I expected nothing from this show.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's where, like, it definitely is in my top shows of 2024 because of the lack of expectations that I was going into it, and then I was thoroughly surprised of how much I was into the story. And also, I think, if anything else, it was the way that the song that was introduced in the beginning of the series was the foundation of the entire series. And I've never seen that done in a show before, that a song and its lyrics were the foundation of what this series was about. And I respect the show for kind of going into the level of detail with that. So, yeah, I was very surprised at how much I enjoyed it. So now, going into Vision Quest, if that show is still around, it's like, if we still have the same creators about WandaVision and for Agatha All Along, maybe there's something worth talking about with Vision Quest. I don't know. Like, if this is a trilogy.
Oh, Vision's new show.
Yeah, Vision's new show. Yeah. Like, I think that's what the makeshift title is. I'm not entirely sure, but like, if you can come up with a clever way of giving a reason to tell this story with a character, I don't know if it necessarily needs it, then like, you prove me once, prove me again.
Which ironically is the same way I felt about WandaVision. Going into WandaVision, we were kind of excited because it was the first Marvel MCU TV show property, like kind of the mixing of the worlds, to say, of the content and how it relates to the narrative. So we were excited for that, but I was like, oh, I don't know, like it'll be good, it'll be all right, and it was surprisingly good, and I think this one kind of fits into that same vein.
These next two shows for me was kind of in my honorable mention. One being Nobody Wants This, starring I think Adrian Brody. No, that's not right. I think that's his name.
I'm pretty sure it's his name.
That's his name, yeah. And Chris. Wow, what's
Kristen
her name? Thank you, Kristen Bell. It was a surprise comedy I wasn't expecting to really enjoy. Megan and I literally finished this in like within a 24-hour time period. It was a show that we started like on a Saturday and we ended it like on a Sunday night. Like it was such an easy breezy watch. It's funny. It has different like ideas about, going into a relationship and family dynamics that go into it. I wasn't expecting to enjoying it, and then just like next episode, why do you have to say anything? Just keep going. It was one of those fun watches where it was quick, but it was worth the ride, and it automatically got renewed for a season 2. So I'm looking forward to like watching season 2, and like the jokes are pretty solid with it. And then Three Body Problem, a show that kind of like had a little bit of a hype, one of Netflix's most expensive shows ever, and I feel like it never got the recognition that it deserved. But it's a bold move by the Game of Thrones creator to adapt this book, and I thought it was worth the journey. Like there was a lot of broad strokes in there, and it's kind of one of those where like we're not spoon feeding the information to you. You really have to pay attention. But if you lean into the idea of what this show is, I feel like it can be fulfilling. So it's not one of my top shows, but it was definitely one that I am glad that I watched. So it's in my honorable mention. So like that, now we're going into a couple of shows that Ernesto and I shared of being worth mentioning at one of the top shows of 2024. Let's start with Shrinking. Shrinking season 2. I just finished it, and man,
damn, it was so
one
strong.
hell of a season.
So good,
so strong,
so good.
To me, like the jokes per minute in this is like nonstop. I think you get like almost a joke every minute to 30 seconds. It's so quick, and each one of them lands. And my God, if Harrison Ford does not win an Emmy for this performance, like there's not a lot of points where, like, not since Ted Lasso, and this is the creators of Ted Lasso, that I get happy tears and sad tears. Like there's so much relatability to this show, a lot of emotion that flows through here, a lot of like tragedy that's in it, but it's consistently funny. And I didn't realize that this is the type of comedy that I love. Like between Ted Lasso and Shrinking, this is what I need. I need realism, and I need like relatability, but yet make me laugh, but also kind of make me cry.
Well, I think this conversation, not to the same as dramatic, but I think it extends to The Bear as well, where it's like the like people really lean into dramedy because it's the thing that's most relatable to life. Like even when you're going through hard shit, like sometimes these little glimpses of humor are really what elevates you and help you get through they really get you through the hard times is relying on that humor. And I think Shrinking and The Bear both are able to do those things very effectively. But Shrinking this season, oh my God, it just ripped me to the core. I think it's like so many just parenting and like dealing with hard things and and then the whole Liz dealing with infidelity with her husband after being in a marriage for so long, and like everybody perceives them as to be like this perfect couple, and to watch them go through that and how they navigate that, I thought it was really, I just thought it was really well done. Everybody had their moments of like their thing that they were going through, and just how it tied together in the end. I just thought was done really effectively.
Yeah, and I think the ending was very strong. I was not expecting Brett Goldstein, Roy fucking Kent, to be in this show, to have a much different role in this show, and to really kind of lean into it, and then have a very strong ending of kind of like going into like the grieving process and almost acceptance and forgiveness. Like that takes time, and this show doesn't just lean into it and like wrap it up in an episode. it lingers. It's like there was a problem that you felt like was resolved, but then it comes back 3 episodes later because it wasn't truly resolved. But as an audience, you think it is, and that's just life. You think you're over something. You think you got over it. You think you've conquered your fear of it, but yet it trickles back in. You have a relapse in a way. It's human of us to want something better, but also not willing to admit our faults. And we see a lot of that with even Harrison Ford, like going through Parkinson's. Is like he made me laugh so much, but at the end of that episode with that speech, I was in tears.
Oh, yes.
Like of what he had to say.
Yes, absolutely. When was it Thanksgiving dinner?
Yes, the Thanksgiving.
Oh my
yeah.
gosh. That to me, that was just a great episode. Or when you see Brett Goldstein, and let's talk spoilers. At the very end, when he's standing on the edge, and you get the sense that he's gonna throw himself in front of this train, and then the last person you expect to save him is the one that literally pulls him off the edge, and that's an open. And I love that he's like, I'm not here for me, I'm here for her. And it's a testament to like, you're willing to do anything for your kids, including build and help a person who killed the only other person who means anything to you. Like I can't even imagine what I would do in that situation.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I can be as forgiving as the person who killed my wife. I don't know. I don't think that I would be.
But also like they even play with that idea of like everyone believes that they're the hero when it comes down to it, and yet even having that conversation with his daughter is like, and I failed you miserably. Like I was not there for you, but we all believe that we could be the better person once we get to that moment. But yet, when it actually calls, your true colors come out, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just like that's just who you are, and it takes time to get to a person that you're comfortable
with.
And like the whole point of like this jimmying therapy that was throughout this whole movie, this whole series, it honestly had like a slow start, but man, did it build up and have just like these strong episodes emotionally. And then the running joke with Harrison Ford, with him like tapping his chest, he goes, my bad. And it became a punchline, and then it was like a continued throwaway joke that was like he's leaving a room, he's like, my bad, and then like just walks away. It's the running joke that just keeps like gold, and I keep laughing at it. And also like their overly like honest conversations with each other sexually as well. Like nobody there had any boundaries, and it was, I think, just some of the absurd things that they would say to each other is just inherently funny. And like it's like, again, it's like when a show can make you laugh and cry at the same time, it's just pure gold to me. And again, going back into the Bear hits my honorable mention this year, and I only say that because like it's hard to come back from a strong season 2. The season 2 was so strong that season 3 just didn't live up to it. It had its strong, like we mentioned before in a previous episode, its strong individual episodes, but as a whole season, it just doesn't measure up. But it had strong character moments within the season.
Absolutely. I mean, Ayo Edebiri's episode is, it was just so well done for her first time directing. Like for an episode to be that strong, and we just saw she got the nomination, the Directors Guild nomination for it. So I mean, it's well warranted. It's well warranted.
Hacks season 3, another strong season from Hacks, from a show I did not expect to love so much, and I feel like they did not pull any punches when it came to season 3. And the biggest punch of all was within its finale, and I was like, damn, this show is so good.
Great writing. Fantastic writing.
Great writing. It's like, it's not like, up until season 3, it's like, I can't wait for the next season. Like, I'm always like excited for when the show comes out, but it keeps improving on itself season after season.
Agreed.
It's just a great third season from Hacks. House of the Dragon season 2. This is the first time I've actually watched Game of Thrones in a week-to-week basis. I had a great time watching this show with you. And just overall, this again for me, it hits my honorable mentions that it's somewhat forgettable of a season because I can't pinpoint a lot of things that happen within the show. But it honestly, at the end of the day, now looking back, there are some moments that just felt like a build up to season 3.
And I think a lot of this season was because I think as we were doing the week to week, I decided to read the book. I mean, and there's some good moments in this season, but I think they're building up for the next season to be even better. My only worry is how much they're going to stretch out because they ended this season in a point where I was like, oh, that is not how I thought the season was going to end based off the events that are going to happen in the book. And where they ended it kind of it lengthens out the timeline of this narratively of what they still have. Like, there's a lot of story left to be told. So they've got maybe
and they said
2 seasons left, I think.
They said they said they got renewed for season 3 and 4.
Yeah, and hopefully that'll be it because in that should be enough.
Yeah.
But even that, I feel like could be a stretch. So
interesting. But yeah, overall, I thought it was a strong show. Yeah. It still is. And me watching it week to week with you gave me a better appreciation for this show.
Yeah, I agree.
Than I had prior. But ultimately, there was just a few things that just, when I'm thinking about the other shows that came out this year, this one didn't quite crack my top 10, but also worth mentioning. But I think it did crack your top 10.
I believe so, yes.
And then one of the, before we move on to the next page, X-Men 97.
So good.
What a surprise hit that show was.
To me, the animation is gorgeous. And to me, it just narratively, it's just so well written. Like, why is a kids' TV show so written this damn good? Like, it is so good. It's so adult. I just can't help but just notice how good the show is. It just has a lot of great moments, a lot of Magneto's monologues, those moments that he's given. I mean, the Genova
Genosis or I don't the mutant island.
The mutant island. Excuse me, I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but that episode is just heartbreaking. It's just so crazy to watch. And I would go back and rewatch it again. I think I can't wait to see what they produce for the next season. We get more TV shows like that.
Yeah, and honestly, again, what a great year for Marvel Television to kind of give us this out of the box show that no one was really asking for, but then all of a sudden, we're just going to continue off of the X-Men 97 series. It's is this part of the MCU? No, not really. It's just we love it so much we just want to do it.
Now.
And then even for now, you're right. And then they talk about the creators. It's did you have any input from Marvel? They're the only input we have was include the theme.
Which is very iconic to the original TV series. So I get it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it makes complete sense. But also, aside from the theme, the score should not be as good as it is. You go back and listen to the Newton Brothers score on X-Men 97, and almost every one of those is a banger. And you're my God. This is for an animated series, and they did not pull any punches with this. It's we're treating this as this is the actual X-Men movie.
Clearly, yeah.
So whenever we get to that X-Men movie, I want Marvel to hire the Newton Brothers to give me that level of energy they put into.
See, but it can't be the same score, but it has to have just a hint of the elements of it.
Yes. But man, I was so surprised with it because it was one of those things I never watched the 97 series and I'm not sure what Marvel's doing. And you can pick right up where it left off. It's you don't need to watch all the other shows. This is a great job. Just hey, just watch.
It'll give you more context, but they give you enough to get by.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, some other shows that we thought was worth mentioning in our top of 2024. Let's start with Fallout.
Fantastic.
Fantastic show. Another one of those that I had a lot of positive buzz. A show that kind of was released all at once.
Yeah.
Where I was quite surprised for Amazon to do that because they don't do that with all their shows. Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power like that was a week to week. But this one could have easily been a week to week to garner some buzz. But instead, they put it out all in one episode, all in one. They put all the seasons. Sorry, they put all the episodes out all at once, and it was a surprise hit. That it could have been an easy throwaway, we're just another IP cash grab, but they really gave us a solid story that could live within the video game universe, but not needed. It wasn't an adaptation of Fallout. It was another story within the universe.
Yeah. Which
I can appreciate that a lot.
This is probably the best video game TV adaptation to date. And I think I said this when it came out, but it is so damn good. Like it is so accurate to the Fallout world itself that I can't wait to see what they do with the next season.
Mr. and Mrs. Smith, starring Donald Glover, and I forgot
Maya
the
Erskine?
other person's name. Thank you. To me, another, like, you've watched Atlanta and you were watching Donald Glover with like how he handles his shows. And so maybe you had a little bit of like an insight of what to expect, but the way that he was able to tie in this marriage story within the spy thriller was genius.
Yeah, he's a genius. Like he's so good. He's another. He's just he's just a great creative individual. Like his music, his shows, like how he acts on screen. I just think he has so much to bring to the table, and it's very apparent in Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Like in something that could be another IP cash grab was like basically an introspection into marriage.
Yeah, and like honestly, when you think about it, like the movie Mr. and Mrs. Smith with Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie was kind of similar to that, but then he really fine-tuned it with this.
He had
show.
the space because he had, is a movie versus a TV series where he had the time to really flush it out and like really go through some of the nitty and gritty of it and really to understand their relationship.
Yeah, and then like to really just use the names as like they're not really the names of who they are, but it's a spy, and like again, like kind of leaning into that aspect, but giving us kind of this original story that's surrounding it. Like I give him all the credit there. Seth MacFarlane's Ted, a show that came out in early January of 2024, almost a year ago, and it managed to hit your honorable mention in my top 10. I was not expecting to enjoy this as much as I did. It is so funny, but yet it's weirdly relatable at the same time.
Yes.
Like
it's so outlandish, but it's so good.
Like he threw heart in there with like ridiculous humor, but it works oddly enough.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I was surprised. I think for me, I was just like it stood out to me at how surprisingly good it was because I actually expected to hate it. Like I was like, this is gonna be garbage, and I was wrong because I will happily watch the next season.
Absolutely, and I think he was able to learn a lot from the Orville to give us that level of comedy and drama and relatability that comes with some of the stuff that he was working on.
That's a good point.
So I was giving him a chance because I enjoyed the Orville so much, and I was rewarded with this 7-episode prequel of a movie that doesn't hold up as well as it does. It doesn't hold up as well as it used to, but yet he was able to kind of reignite this character again to make him this lovable drunk bear. I got renewed for season 2, so I'm very much looking forward to the next season. A show that took us by surprise, Baby Reindeer. It's winning all the awards right now. Also won at the Golden Globes for Best Limited Series. It won the Emmy for Best Limited Series. It was a show that you brought up, and you're like, hey, people are talking about it. I got to watch it. And I remember you not telling me much about it. You just said, hey, you got to watch this shit.
Yeah, it's fucking crazy. That's why. Because it's nuts. Because I think the craziest thing is that the main lead is telling from his perspective, his true story. And there's a lot of contention between the real woman in real life and whether or not the things that are portrayed in the show are real. There's a lot of back and forth. I mean, you can literally, and this is kind of like you watch the show and then you can watch the Piers Morgan interview with her, and it's almost like a follow-up, and it's like you see the real woman in life, you're like, okay, it kind of makes sense now. I kind of understand where the story was coming from, and it's just like wow, like first of all, for him to be so brutally honest about some of the things that are portrayed in the show, like there's not things that you would want to like willingly give out information for, because he reveals very vulnerable and personal information about himself.
Absolutely.
So it's just a very raw and real show. It's just kind of crazy. It's a crazy watch. Like, you watch it and you're like, there's no way that this is real.
Yeah. And again, like he even said it, this is through my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And like one of this visceral moments is like, why would you let this go on for so long? And this show explains, and to the point where you kind of like understand how and why it got to this.
Yeah, you're like, oh, well, in that sense, I can kind of see why that happened, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And one of the last shows we want to talk about is Shogun. I didn't know you finished this show.
Yes, I did. It's so good. Like, I can obviously, you see why it's winning all the awards. It's just hard. It just took a long time to get through because it is like a pay attention show.
It's a pay attention. It is dense.
Yes.
But like the production value, the production design, the characters, the story. It's like I watched this in basically one sitting. It was a long day.
I bet.
But I feel like I was rewarded by the end of it, of being kind of just absorbed into this story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like they transport you into this world. And so like this was a limited series, and then, you know, someone paid someone money to make more. And I wish it kind of stayed a limited series because it works as a limited series. But we're getting a season 2. We don't really know what that means in the context of this story, or if it's just as acted as an anthology series. But they put a lot of time and effort into making this world feel lived in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And these characters have so much going on. It's like it's also weird because she's also winning awards. I forgot the actress's name, but she was in Monarch, and I thought she was okay in Monarch, the League, I think King of Monsters or whatever. But then she's in this show and complete 180, and she is like, thank you. Yeah, she nails it in her role, and she's winning all the awards for it, rightfully so. So yeah, definitely up there as one of the top shows of 2024. And as we kind of wrap up our conversation here, for those who are watching, oh, I'm so sorry, I missed one. I forgot, I jumped the gun. Last one we want to talk about is a show that, again, inadvertently hit, without even talking to each other, the show that hit the number one on both of our list, and that is The Penguin.
I mean, this is easily our number one for the year. Like, as we both see, like, it was just so well done. The transformation that Colin Farrell went through, the narrative that they wrote, Kristen Milioti's transformation to turn into Sophia Falcone, I think was just expertly done. And it was just, it was another series that they intended to be a limited series, but because of the intrigue in the show, like they're speculating. There's still talks of what season 2 could be like if they were to do it. So they're entertaining. Right. The idea is out there. There's nothing has been confirmed yet, and I'm okay with that because he needs to focus on the Batman 2 and making sure that that's good.
Yeah, and like this show really blew me away. We were also watching this week to week, and I didn't really again see its existence. Like it didn't feel like a cash grab, but like I wasn't the biggest fan of the Batman. So like I was expecting the same tone as the Batman into the Penguin, but like it was definitely not that. And instead we got this strong story, character development, characters we didn't even know we were excited about. And then like they give us this Sophia Falcone episode that might as well just been the highlight of the season.
Absolutely.
To really turn that character around, to feel for her, to understand her. And then there's a moment like, who am I rooting for at this moment? They're all bad. And they consistently make sure that the Penguin was not a good person. It wasn't like Agatha all along where it was a redeemable act on her part. The Penguin stayed the Penguin. Like Oz stayed just as corrupt and evil, and even oddly strange when we later find out in this show. Like the storytelling and the ending was so strong, by far best show of the year.
And like without question.
But with that, here is the list of our top 10 shows of 2024. I'll go down mine, Ernesto. You can go down yours. Out of all the movies, I keep saying movies. Out of all the TV shows we discussed, number 10 for me is X-Men 97. Number 9 is Shogun. 8 was Agatha All Along. 7 was Baby Reindeer. 6 was Hacks. 5 is Shrinking Season 2, and Hack Season 3. Number 4 was Ted. Number 3 was Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Number 2 was Fallout. And number 1 was The Penguin.
Of course. And then going on my top 10, starting at the bottom, we got Hacks at number 10, Fallout number 9, Shogun 8, Shrinking 7, Mr. and Mrs. Smith as number 6, The Bear as number 5, House of Dragon number 4, X-Men 97 as number 3, Kevin Can F Himself as number 2, and of course The Penguin as number 1. I mean, we got a lot of strong TV shows this year. I'm really excited for what's going to come out this year.
It's crazy even to look at this list side by side of like how much, like, again, we were not talking about what our top lists were, but yet a lot of similarities. We're probably off by 2 shows that were not in each other's lists. And so it's just kind of funny to see that we basically have the same taste.
Exactly. More or less. Or we talk each other into each other's tastes. That's really what it is.
True. Or we just know what quality looks like. That's all we're saying. That's all we're saying.
So you know what?
All right.
That being said, let's go into the movies. We'll start with some of my top. The 2024 Speak No Evil, and I'll even throw in the 2022 Speak No Evil. I think both movies narratively are just really, really well done. I also notate that all 4 of these movies right here are foreign films, except Speak No Evil is based off of a foreign film, and there's an argument on which one is better. Like, there are a lot of things I like about the new Speak No Evil, primarily James McAvoy's performance, but I think narratively, the original one works way better. I think the original one is just a much darker story, and it drives the narrative home a little bit more as a darker narrative. Although I did really enjoy the 2024 version of that film. Moving over to another foreign film, The Teacher's Lounge. I just thought it was just another really interesting film. Just how this teacher just kind of like interjected herself into, if I remember, it was like the politics of all the things that were happening in the school, and it was just something different. And the same thing can be said for Hunger. We get this narrative of this chef coming up in the world and how she's being trained by this guy, and kind of the back and forth of that. I thought was so interesting. And on the flip side, we have Perfect Days, which I think we reviewed early, like January of last year. And I think the movie was so simple, but yet told a very deep story about the main lead. That is what made it even more so enjoyable. I kind of just love the simplicity of it, to kind of dive into that narrative.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that, like, out of all the movies that we watched in 2024, the ones that kind of resonated with you the most were some of the foreign films you watched.
They usually do. Like, I think I always have so much fun when we do our foreign films.
Absolutely. And I'm very much looking forward to see the other international films that get nominated for the Oscars, because then that's when we dive in and see what. That's
right, because Teacher's Lounge was nominated, and Perfect Days were both nominated last year for the Oscars for foreign film, and I enjoyed both of those.
Absolutely, yeah. A few of top films for me. Obviously, we talked in abundance of The Substance. We're not going to talk about too much into that. Saturday Night, the movie from Jason Reitman. Man, was that a fun movie to watch. A 90-minute, like, leading into the first episode of Saturday Night Live. I thought the dialogue was so strong in that movie. And at one point, it was considered as an early Oscar contender, but as the season and the road was kind of painting its own picture, Saturday Night kind of fell off of it. But I still think it's up there as one of the best screenplays I've seen this year.
I agree with you. I don't remember if Saturday Night is on my honor. I know it's not on my top 10, but it's definitely worth at least an honorable mention. Especially technically, that one shot that they do in the beginning of the film is just so well done, and everything they did to recreate production design wise, I think is worth notating.
Absolutely. And like I was very much enthralled by the performance of our lead, who I think Gabriel LaBelle, who played a young a young Steven Spielberg in The Fabelmans, and he was fantastic in that movie. And then he also got a Golden Globe nomination for his performance as Lorne Michaels in Saturday Night. So like he's an up and comer. We've talked about this before. He is 100% up and comer like actor that we're going to be see him do great things in the future. Like he's already getting early noms for it. It is one of these roles he's just going to blow it out of the water, and he's going to get his Oscar for sure. Civil War, Alex Garland's Civil War, a movie that just had me enthralled with the idea and strong storytelling. What a phenomenal performance from Kristen Dunst. Like one of the best I've seen in a long time from her. Kaylee Spaney, who had a phenomenal year coming off of this and Alien Romulus, a breakout star in my opinion that I haven't seen her much in another project. But I loved how this movie was formed, what they had to say about our society, and the strong ending it had for this movie. Just really created a statement. In our climate right now.
And to me, I really enjoyed it, especially just kind of showing the photojournalist aspect of it, and Jesse Plemons, like he was in it for was in it for such a short amount of time, but like it was just so, his scene is just so impactful in that movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one worth noting is Challengers, a movie you also reviewed around mid this year, maybe around April or so. I went back and watched this movie recently with Megan, and I enjoyed it as much as I did the second time around. And I like the dynamic between our three leads here, kind of fighting over this woman, but not really. But it's more about the game of tennis, and like she's basically in control the entire time of what these two people are doing. And also there's so much other things that are happening within it. And it was also an ending that I really wanted to happen. And then when it did, I was so satisfied with myself. I was like, yeah, I can write.
Yeah, I'm a writer.
So I'm a writer. And so like it just narratively, that's where it was going. And I love that it did that. And what a strong ending it was. And like her visceral scream at the end really just honed in on like what this movie was maybe trying to say. But I was in it. I loved it. I loved it so much. And then another movie that kind of was near and dear to my heart was the 4:30 movie. I watched it. I'm not sure if you ever caught it or not.
I did not get a chance to watch it. I really did want to watch it though.
It's basically a love letter to moviegoers. Like that's what it felt like. And it brought a tear to my eye, and there was a lot of great quotes in there that is just so relatable. And I think one of the big things that Kevin Smith wrote in his movie was like, we go to the movies for movies make life make sense. And that still rings in my head today. We go to the movies to experience other things that we wouldn't otherwise around the world, like for different situations that we would never be in or may likely never be in. And we see how others are portrayed in those situations. And yeah, we go to the movies to get a different perspective about a few things and maybe think about other things that you might, maybe could help you in some ways that you weren't expecting because you didn't think the movie was going to go down this path. And there's been so many times where I would watch a scene and I just instantly helps me with a problem that I could have been I was having. Like inadvertently just answered my own question that I've been rattling my brain about.
It's crazy how it happened. It's so many movies and films, or it's like one line that just like, and you'll just sit and think about that shit all day. Yeah.
And this movie definitely did that more ways than one. It was a little campy and childish at times, but like just the whole nature of it, I just ignored it. It's like, I love what this movie represents, and that's all you can really. Still enjoyable. All right, so these are also the movies that we share as some of the top films of 2024. Let's talk about Deadpool and Wolverine. Like we mentioned before, it's a love letter to the fans who love Marvel, who are keeping up with the MCU, who liked Deadpool and Wolverine. It's just a fun movie all around.
Yeah, it didn't crack my top 10, but it was definitely in my honorable mentions. I think there was just so much anticipation with this film, and that, this is the first film after Marvel's, slump, I guess we could call it. And this was kind of like maybe even a return to form, but even like at least a step in the correct direction. Because the movie is still kind of campy.
Right.
It has its issues. It plays off a lot on the cameos but I'm fine with it. I think I think it's a fun movie, and I think on the rewatch it'll be really well done. And I mean there are a lot of out of everything, I loved the storyline they crafted for Wolverine. To me, it resonated. I thought it was really good. Like, getting yourself back up again. Like, I'm always a sucker for those type of stories. So.
Yeah, and honestly, like, we talked about a little bit with The Substance and multiple of other movies, but like, if for a movie that can satisfy me as a fan, and like I'm willing to forgive all the other inconsistencies about it because I'm having so much fun just going along for the ride. Another movie that kind of like was probably the first big hit of the year was Dune Part 2.
Yeah, this movie is incredible. This is like obviously one of my top movies for the year. It's just so damn good. Like I've rewatched this movie several times, and to me it does not get old. No, and I think it's like almost 2.5, 3 hours long. It's so like, damn, Denis Villeneuve knows how to make a damn movie. Like this man makes banger after banger after banger. Like he does not make bad movies.
And it's funny because I have a hard time resonating with Denis Villeneuve's films, but I can easily say that Dune Part 2 has been my favorite amongst the films that he's done. And I do need to give his movies another try because it's
Prisoners? Come on.
Give you credit. I love Prisoners.
Prisoners
was great.
Amazing film. Arrival is like, that movie fucked me up for so long. That movie, oh my God. Every time I watch it, I feel like I get a brand new understanding of it. The man just understands sci-fi. And that's really what it is.
Yeah. I need to go back and rewatch Arrival because I did not have the same reaction like everybody else did. I also did not hit with Blade Runner 2049.
That's probably the low out of all of them. Like, I like it, but it's probably the one that's on the bottom for me out of all of them. But it's still a good movie, but in comparison to everything else he's done, to me it lands on the bottom.
Yeah, and because of Dune Part 2, I went back and rewatched Dune Part 1, and it lands. Yeah. Like, I wasn't into it as much as I did the first time, but rewatching it, I was able to connect with it more, and then leaning into the second one where that really just, like, really hits with it. So, like, yeah, a great film. It did not crack my top 10, but it was definitely in my honorable mentions of a movie that I really enjoyed this year. Another one that did crack my top 10, Alien Romulus. Man, was this a fun movie that basically pays homage to the entire franchise that came before, as well as setting its own new rules within the franchise and really making it its own. Like, for a franchise that has been all over the place, this truly brings it back to form.
Agreed 100%. I mean, to me, and going through, I watched the first 4 Alien movies, and this movie is, and I haven't watched Prometheus or Covenant, I think it's called. But to me, this is the strongest one out of the franchise.
Yeah, very much. It's one of the strongest, if not the strongest. I agree with you there. Another movie that we were very much excited for that 100% delivered was Monkey Man, Dev Patel's directorial debut, with the backing of Jordan Peele's production company. Man, what a thrill ride this was.
So fantastic. Like, and also a testament, like, some of the movie was shot on iPhone, and he was like kind of like a run and gun like director of like stitching this movie together. And it just goes to show you that you don't need to have like the world's best camera, or like, you just need to have a good attitude and just like that that can do attitude that like we can do it. We're just gonna have to figure it out, and he figured it out.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look bad. Like it looks like it is a well constructed film.
It was also a role that we've never seen Dev Patel do before, and he even said it. He was constantly turned down for action movies, and he really wanted to be in one. So what do? You make one. You make your own.
Yep.
You make your own action movie.
Yep.
And like so much so that I think this movie was bought by somebody else, and it was going to go straight to streaming. And then Jordan Peele got a hold of it and was like, no, this needs to be in the theaters. And he bought the movie from them and, created it into something that was a better fit for people to experience it. And he gave us a thrill ride with that movie. Very, very like a strong directorial debut from Dev
Absolutely.
Patel.
I look forward to whatever project he's going to do next.
Absolutely. Moving on to some other top films of 2024, Inside Out 2, one of the animated films that was a smash hit.
Amazing.
It is the highest grossing film of the year of 2024, and understandably so. This movie brought all the feels just as much as the first one did, and adding the new emotions just elevated where the story can go.
Oh my God. It's surprising how good it was, because I expected it to be good, but I didn't expect it to, at least for me, it supersedes the first one. I think it takes the elements of the first one and then it just elevates it to the next level.
Yeah, and like the story is so strong, you can tell that. And for me, this was a huge win for Pixar because this was like return to form. We saw them have a great film 2 years ago now with Elemental, and we very much enjoyed Elemental. And like Pixar was having a little bit of a slump with all their Disney Plus releases, and Lightyear did not go as planned for them.
It's not good.
And so seeing Elemental give us like this familiar story that Pixar is known for, and then we have Inside Out 2 that's like now Pixar is back, and they give us a very strong sequel to the first movie. This was understandably so why this was one of the best animated movies of the year, but in my opinion, not the best animated movie of the year. And for my opinion, that title goes to The Wild Robot, because not only the score is just hits on all cylinders, fires on all cylinders, but man, was I weeping like a baby.
Oh, I cried like a bitch during this movie. I thought it was so good. It was so good. Why is this movie so good? It
has no right.
Exactly. I think it's one that we just expected to it'll be good. But it's like, no, the animation style is just so good, and the voice acting and the score and there's a song in there that just elevates the movie to the next level. And actually, this is another movie. We read the movie. We watched the movie, and then we read the book, or listened to the book. I guess is what I should say. But they were equally as good, and I can't wait for whatever Wild Robot 2 is.
Yeah, and it's so heartbreaking yet so emotionally like there's so much emotion behind it. And like honestly, aside from How to Train Your Dragon, DreamWorks doesn't do movies like this. So what happened here? I mean, I know what happened. It's Chris Sanders who gave us How to Train Your Dragon as well as Lilo and Stitch, and he put so much emotion to this movie, and you're like, this movie's meant for children? I don't think the children understand half the shit that's going on in this movie. It basically is like what it means to be a parent as well as to care for others. It's so well done, and I truly wasn't expecting it. And even Megan, more or less yelled at me, was like, "Why'd you make me watch this movie?" It's just. This just brings you to tears the entire time. It's so good. And the music, this score needs to win.
It definitely needs to be nominated.
Absolutely. A movie that was it's honestly one of the only movies that felt like a summer movie for me.
Good summer blockbuster.
And that was Twisters.
Yep, exactly.
Yes,
perfectly
that was
fitting.
Twisters.
Yep, I agree with you 100%.
Yes. Such a fun ride. Again, it could have been a cheesy sequel, which I expected it to be. But then we're like, oh, this movie actually slaps. And it's having fun with the idea, and it just feels like a roller coaster ride. And Glenn Powell's doing good. Like Anthony Ramos is doing pretty good. Like Daisy Jones, I believe her name is doing fairly well. It's like, yeah, no, this is like a solid summer movie, and it definitely elevated my experience watching it in 4K. I'm sorry, not 4K. Watching it in 40X.
Oh man, I wish we could. That movie needs a re-release for that.
Yeah, it was a thrill ride I wasn't expecting, and 40X definitely elevated that for sure. It was a surprise hit for me. So yeah, like that's a fun movie to watch. And then last but certainly not least, we have the phenomenon that is Wicked.
Like a movie just swept the end of the year by storm. Like it just completely captivated audiences, which is, I mean, as it should. The stage production is phenomenal. The music is incredible. I think Cynthia Erivo elevates Idina Menzel's performance of Elphaba. Ariana Grande is up there with Kristen Chenoweth. I think they both proved that they were meant to play these roles. And I think I cannot wait to see what they put out for part 2 because of the care, just the amount of care they put into the first part. Like this movie, movie set the bar for how movie musicals should be. They should be these grand spectacles like Wicked was.
Yeah, and honestly, like I don't think I was expecting to be this swept away within this movie, and I was completely blown away by Ariana Grande's performance. And even in Cynthia Erivo's, but mainly with Ariana Grande because there was so much contention about her casting. Mm-hmm. And she understood the assignment and ran with
Absolutely.
it. And like she nailed that performance. So much so that I believe, depending on whoever else is nominated, she deserves the win for that.
Ooh.
Like that was a true standout for them.
I guess
in that movie.
We'll have to see.
Yes. But yeah, that's it, right? Those are all the movies.
Those are all the movies.
Yeah. Okay. Then. So yeah, as we wrap up our movie conversation, here's our top 10. I'll start with number 10. We have the 4:30 movie. Number 9 is Challengers. Number 8 is Civil War. Number 7 is Alien Romulus. Number 6 is Wicked. Number 5 is Saturday Night. Number 4 is Deadpool and Wolverine. Number 3 is the summer blockbuster Twisters. Number 2 is The Wild Robot. And to Ernesto's surprise, my number 1 is the movie we just talked about, The Substance.
All right, so for me, we got top 10 is Twisters at 10, Hunger at 9, Alien Romulus at 8, Wild Robot at 7, Perfect Days at 6, Inside Out 2 at 5, Wicked at 4, Monkey Man at 3, Speak No Evil at 2, and of course, Dune 2 at number 1. 2024 was a beautiful season. I'm really looking forward. I feel like we got a lot of bangers for this year coming out.
Yeah, and there's a lot of a lot of exciting movies that are coming out in 2025. I know we were kind of giving a brief overview a few weeks ago, but I think it's easy to say, at least for the two of us, the two movies we're highly looking forward to is Superman and the Fantastic Four First Steps.
Absolutely. Those are probably my main two that I'm looking forward to this year. I'm sure we're going to stumble. I mean, there's Brave New World. There's a lot of great movies that are on the slate, but I think just off initial, those two are my top two that I'm most looking forward to for this year.
Absolutely. And then obviously coming off of the heels of the phenomenon that is Wicked. Mm-hmm. Wicked, what's it called now?
Wicked for Good.
If Wicked for Good. That's the official title for the part 2, and that is also a very now highly anticipated movie coming out this year. So a lot of great movies that come out in 2025, but that is the official box office wrap.
We did it.
Of 2024. It's a long episode,
it's almost
guys.
3 hours.
But hey, we told you it's almost 3 hours. It might be the longest episode we've ever.
Oh, it is. 100% is. But that's what we got a double. I think what it hit is we got this double Oscar review and our best of. I mean. Yeah. We do Oscar reviews. It's not a conversation if the movie's good. It's more of like picking it apart and kind of looking underneath the hood of like all the little things that they did.
And it's so funny because at the very beginning of this episode, you said that this was jam-packed, and I questioned it. And I should not have done that because we definitely filled the more than we usually do within these
episodes. And folks,
episodes.
We had planned to do more. And I told Matt
We
no.
did.
I was like, we have enough. There's enough here to keep us busy.
There's enough here to talk about, for sure. So that's where you got to come back next week.
That's right.
For more movie fun. If you want more from us, however, you can always follow us on our social media channels. You can follow us at Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok as it stands.
While it's still there.
While it's still there. X and Letterbox page at Box Office Binger, and our Threads and Instagram page at Box Office _Bingers. We've been talking for way too much, so we got to wrap this up. I can't even finish all this. We'd like to thank each and every one of you for listening to us just talk about movies. Really do appreciate it. Come back next week and for the rest of 2025 for more movie fun. You're not going to regret it. And for that, I've been your host, Matt Diaz.
Been Ernesto Santos. See ya.